Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show for this week. Today we're going to be talking about week one. We're going to talk about IDP snap counts, IDP defensive player alignments positioning, IDP injuries, resulting waiver impacts, trade targets. We're going to talk about it all. With that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, everyone. I am your host, Ricky Rodriguez. You can find me on X at RickyRod66. And I am joined by my special guest, Shawn T. And you can find Shawn at Shawn8386. Shawn is going to try and make as many of these shows as he can as we go through the season. He might not be able to make them all, so that's why I noted him as a special guest. But Shawn is special. If you've been following the IDP Advice Show, you know how great he is at IDP stuff. All right. We're thrilled to be with you here on Tuesday, September 9th to recap week one of the season. As I talked about in the intro, we're going to talk about snap counts, defensive alignments, injuries, waivers, you name it as we go through, including surprises, disappointments, you name it, okay? And of course, if you missed previous episodes, go to the IDP Plus YouTube channel. You can find them all there, or you can find them on Spotify as well. And if you have comments or questions, go ahead and leave them on the IDP Plus YouTube channel. Shawn and I will be periodically going to there and answering your questions and reviewing your comments and feedback. So please do that for us, okay? Now, as we're getting into this, first thing I want to tell you, a brief public service announcement. It is week one. Do not panic, okay? There's some clear things that have happened that we can make decisions on, but there's some players, Aiden Hutchinson, for example, who may have disappointed week one, but we're not going to drop Aiden Hutchinson, okay? So let's not panic here in week one. Let's take a deep breath, all right? As we're getting into these details, some things I want y'all to know. If I use the term close to the line or something along those lines, that means it's a combo of the defensive player was either on the defensive line, in the box, or in the slot. So when I use the term close to the line, that's what that means, folks. It excludes wide corner, or outside corner, it excludes deep safety or free safety. I'll use deep and free interchangeably as well. Last year, I didn't have a chance to 100% check the exact number, but it was about 63.5 snaps per team each game on defense. So you're going to hear some stats where we're talking about the fact that some teams had 50 snaps, some had in the 70s and 80s, and that creates outliers, both good and bad. So we're going to be careful about how we make judgments off of the stats for that given week. And in the past, if we go back a few years, we were looking for safeties that had like 70% of the time in the box and maybe 30% of the time deep. But now, for the most part, what you're going to see is if we get someone playing 50% of their snaps roughly in the box, that's a good thing. And we're going to talk a lot about that, okay, as we go through a lot of these stats. Okay. With that, we're going to jump in. We're going to start with the AFC East, and we're going to start with the Buffalo Bills, folks. And Buffalo, back to the point I talked about, only played 51 snaps this past week. And, of course, the Baltimore Ravens had a bunch of quick scores with Derrick Henry running up and down the field on them. So that's part of the reason they only had 51 snaps. Terrell Bernard played 100% of the snaps. His productivity wasn't very good, but once again, 51 snaps will do that. Matt Milano played 88% of the snaps. That's still startable in your deeper leagues. His tackle numbers also weren't very good, but at least he had a sack to bail us out. The clear thing to take away, though, from the linebacker core of the Bills, Dorian Williams was the number 3 linebacker. He played 33% of the snaps. So I know they picked up Shaq Thompson. I even saw Shaq Thompson playing special teams and all. But right now, Dorian Williams is the number 3 linebacker for the Bills. On the edge side of things, we saw Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa both played a healthy 69% of the snaps. The thing we're worried about Rousseau is that his snap count was finally high enough last year to give him enough snaps to generate IDP points and IDP stats for us. He got 69%. If he can stay in that 70% range, I think we'll feel pretty good about an edge number 2 for him. Joey Bosa, I was surprised he played so much, but I think it was because of the Ravens. I'll be surprised if it stays that high. Shawn, what do you think about Bozer? Do you think his snaps are going to stay that high, or you think that was just because of the Baltimore Buffalo game?
Yeah, that was a surprise to me as well. I'm looking for that to drop, and I think Epinesa will actually rotate a little closer to 50-50, if not overtake the majority going forward.
Right. And particularly as they have leads and so forth, you can see more of that. I am 100% aligned with you there. Now, the defensive back position, both Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp played 100% of the snaps. DeMar Hamlin played a big old goose egg. And there were some plays that if you watch the game, you could say, why didn't they take out Bishop or Rapp? But the fact that they left them there while they were struggling leads us to believe that DeMar Hamlin isn't going to leapfrog them. I know they have Jordan Poyer on the practice squad, but Poyer is 33, if I remember correctly, maybe going on 34. No one really signed him off the off season. I think he's veteran depth, but not much more than that. Shawn, we're not worried about um, Poyer taking snaps from these guys, are we?
No, I think this is just a service to him for being loyal to the team for all these years. If they make the playoffs and get the Super Bowl, he'll get a ring. That's all I think it is.
Now, because of the Ravens' alignments and so forth, they don't play a lot of three wide. Teron Johnson, who we usually can rely on as a slot cornerback to give us cornerback points, only played 67% of snaps and only had 2 solo tackles, and that was it from a stat line perspective. So that's another one that we don't want to panic on. But the thing to know about slot cornerbacks, folks, so part of what we're going to do on this show is educate, is look for the teams that are playing a lot of 11 personnel, not teams that are playing a lot of 12 or 13 personnel, because those 11 personnel means 3 cornerbacks on the field more often than not, giving them the chance to generate the stats. And this is an example where Teron Johnson probably wasn't a good play this week as a result of that. Last thing I want to mention about the Bills, actually 2 more things real quick. Ed Oliver played 69% of snaps, and he was a freaking beast. And not just because he forced that fumble on Derrick Henry. He had 6 solo tackles. He had tackles for loss. He had quarterback hits. I mean, he was very, very effective in his role. And the last thing now, Cole Bishop, 53% of his snaps were deep. Taylor Rapp's 49%. Now, the thing we'll have to watch is the good news is that means they're roughly 50% close to the line. But was that because of Derrick Henry, and will it look a little bit different in week 2? So something to consider. Cole Bishop, not someone I'm necessarily wanting to start this coming week if I have him. Shawn, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, even in deep leagues, I actually have a lot of Cole Bishop shares, and I mean he's sitting on the bench. I'm waiting for, like you say, to see a better alignment for him in the box to really produce here. Uh, but in really deep leagues, I mean, both these guys are, they're kind of on the same level here. They're both startable in really deep leagues. Shallow leagues, not so much.
Right. Exactly. All right, moving on to the Patriots, who played almost a spot on of the typical average from last year, 63 snaps. Robert Spillane played 100% of the snaps, and his output was not very good. 3 solo tackles, and that was it. I had this fear. Shawn and I had this debate during the off season about Spillane going to the system and what will it mean for his productivity and all. And at least in week 1, this is a discouraging sign. Shawn, 1 week outlier?
He had 3 missed tackles, so it could have been 6. I'm not panicking yet. It's not ideal production, but week 1, let's see where it goes.
Exactly. This is one we're not going to do a panic drop on, but we're going to keep an eye on things. Now, Christian Ellis played the number 2 linebacker role. And as a reminder, on some forums, he has a defensive line designation. So as a defensive line designation, he played 70% of the snaps, got 8 tackles in total, 5 solo, 3 assists. And so that could be very valuable in these where he has a defensive line designation. But as a linebacker, he only played 70% of the snaps, which is on the riskier side. So glad he was so productive with those 70% snaps. But that doesn't feel good to rely on a week-to-week basis. Moving into the defensive line for a second, Harold Landry was a freaking beast, okay? He played 76% of the snaps, 2.5 sacks, 5 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 4 quarterback hits. Now, as a reminder, once again, we like to do education. This is the first show of the year. When someone gets a sack, they get a sack, they get a tackle, they get a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit, excuse me. So they get all of those things when they get a sack. So sometimes when you hear these things, wow, 4 quarterback hits, 2.5 sacks. Well, three of those were sacks, and there's one other extra quarterback hit is basically what happened there. Caleb Chason started across from him, had three tackles, all assisted tackles, and contributed half a sack with Landry. Keon White played 46% of the snaps. We talked about in that last preseason game how much he played and how he had fallen on the depth chart. And as a side note, Anthony Jennings was inactive. If you have Anthony Jennings, you can certainly drop him. Moving to the defensive secondary now, Christian Gonzalez was out. Alex Austin and Carlton Davis played 100% of the snaps basically on the outside. Marcus Jones was as we expected, was your slot cornerback, but he only played 63% of the snaps. So with that, the productivity was, not too bad for that. It was 4 total tackles, one of which was a tackle for loss, and he got a pass defense. And as a side note, he did do punt returns, and he had 2 punt returns for 16 yards. So if you have a return yardage league and he's going to be playing a lot in 11 personnel, he's definitely somebody to kind of keep in mind for those extra points you get for the return yards, along with the slot snaps. Safety is the last big thing we want to talk about with the Patriots. Craig Woodson and Jalen Hawkins played 100% of the snaps. Kyle Duggar only played 11% of the snaps. Okay. Of that, Woodson was in the box close to the line, let me rephrase that, 48% of the time. Hawkins was only there 32% of the time. So Hawkins was deep 68% of the time. If you look at the stats, though, while Woodson had more tackles, Hawkins had a broader line. Woodson had 7 tackles. Hawkins had 5. But then Hawkins also got a sack. He got a couple tackles for loss. He got a pass defense. And he got a quarterback hit along with that sack, as we were just talking about. So Woodson had the more ideal usage on the field. Hawkins had some additional productivity. Shawn, what is our guidance for our listeners and watchers right now? Is it Hawkins or is it Woodson?
Well, the usage says Woodson because it's hard to rely on those big plays, the sacks, the interceptions every week. But if I go back to Mike Vrabel's time in Tennessee and with Kevin Byard there and some of the big years he had, it's not out of line to say Hawkins can't be the top guy here either. So I'm actually really happy with both productions. But if you want the shorter, more consistent, probably stats, you're looking at Woodson. But if you're going for those big plays, you take Hawkins.
That is excellent feedback, Shawn, for our listeners. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move to the Jets, who only played 56 snaps against the Steelers. And Jamian Sherwood and Quincy Williams at the linebacker position played 100% of those snaps. Marcelino McCrary-Ball actually played 20% of the snaps. So if you're wondering who the number 3 linebacker is currently for the Jets, that's who it was. Now, I would say that both Sherwood and Williams gave us maybe disappointing stats. At least Williams got a sack for us later in the game, which certainly helped him. Both finished with a total of 6 tackles. Sherwood, 3 of those 6 were solo. Quincy, 4 of those 6 were solo. So that was the difference there. A little bit concerning on the production from Sherwood, similar to Spillane, we're not going to panic quite yet because I think a lot of people were expecting probably 10 tackle weeks every week out of Sherwood. Because a lot of people drafted him in the top 5, right, Shawn?
Yeah, he was going high. You had to take him high to get him. He just wasn't falling, or he wasn't in the leagues I was in. But yeah, again, week 1, 100% of the snaps. That's good. That's encouraging. A little bit low on the snaps overall with the 56. And it was a bit of just a wild game in general. So I'm not panicking yet.
Okay. Now, Michael Carter II was the starting slot cornerback. He played 66% of the snaps. So if you wondered who the number three slot cornerback, and we did have a couple of people put into our one of our last shows on the IDP Plus YouTube channel asking about talking about cornerbacks and slots. So that's why, in particular, I'm making sure that we're calling out who the slot cornerbacks were and the percentage of snaps that they played, just so that y'all are aware. So we listen to the feedback as FYI. At the safety position, Tony Adams and Andre Cisco both played 100% of the snaps. What was interesting about that is that Adams played 45% close to the line of scrimmage, which is really good. And with that, he delivered 6 tackles. You would have hoped for a little bit more, but once again, it was only 56 snaps, not 63 snaps like that, not the average. And Cisco ended up playing 66% of the snaps deep. So it looks like if anybody's going to be playing more towards the box, it's going to be Adams, not Cisco. Interestingly enough, Isaiah Oliver did not get a single snap during the game on defense. So that was very interesting. On the edge side of things, it was primarily Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, and Michael Clemens. Jermaine Johnson led by far with 89% of the snaps, but he only had 2 unassisted tackles. The thing I'm worried about Jermaine Johnson, and I've told people this during the offseason, is, similar for like Jalen Phillips coming back as well. Coming back from some of these serious injuries, like an Achilles injuries, really robs you of that explosiveness. So while I'd be happy to take Jermaine Johnson in 2026, wasn't on his bandwagon for 2025. Maybe later in the year, things will get a little bit better for him. But right now, 89% of the snaps, 2 unassisted tackles, not very encouraging. Will McDonald and Michael Clemens played 55 and 54% of the snaps respectively. Michael Clemens had a goose egg, nada, not zero, you name it kind of thing, not a single freaking stat to account for on 54% of the snaps. That ain't good for people. Will McDonald came up with 2 sacks and 3 quarterback hits, and he had 3 total tackles, so which 2 of those were sacks. So very happy about Will McDonald's production. Was hoping to see a little bit more of the snap count. I can see over time maybe some of the Jermaine Johnson snap count coming down and Will McDonald picking up a little bit more of that. Shawn, Quinnen Williams, from a defensive tackle perspective, excellent playing time, 77% of the snaps, 5 total tackles. He had a sack, a couple tackles for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. Is Quinnen Williams going to in for a resurgence, or is this maybe the Steelers' offensive line and Aaron Rodgers not being mobile like he used to be?
I'm sure that had something to do with it. This is the production we wanted last year when we thought, he was going to come out of the gate hot, because this is, it was part of his ascension in the previous years. He was supposed to blow up last year, and he just kind of fell flat. So it's good to see that he can do it, and now we just got to hope he continues to do so. But yeah, I would say the statue of Aaron Rodgers being on the field had a little to do with that.
Yeah, and the Steelers' running game really struggled as well. So,
Right.
So all those things I think certainly help Quinnen Williams. But we're on the Quinnen Williams bandwagon, so let's hope this continues for sure. You talked about blow up in your last comment. Speaking of blowing up, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins here. They played 73 snaps on defense. I don't know if there was a more disappointing team this past week than the Miami freaking Dolphins, folks. And as I'm saying that, I just remembered that Shawn's favorite team is the Dolphins.
My former favorite team was the Dolphins. It was awful. It was absolutely terrible.
It was. But there was some good IDP production. And both Tyrell Dodson and Jordan Brooks played 73% of the snap. 100% of those 73 snaps, which is fantastic. Jordan Brooks had 14 tackles, which was second in the league. Tyrell Dodson had 13 tackles, which was third in the league, which is fantastic for both of them, including 1 tackle for loss that both of them had. So if this play continues and they play in more than the league average, we had Jordan Brooks as a close to top 12 linebacker. Some people had him, low end 1, some high end 2. We had Tyrell Dodson, low end 2, high end 3. Both of these guys have huge opportunities for success here from an IDP perspective. And Willie Gay, And in fact, there are some websites out there. I went and looked at some of the depth charts just to see, because to compare about what we've been telling our audience. Some had Willie Gay starting over Tyrell Dodson. I hope you were listening to us. I hope we were hearing the noise when we were saying there's still Tyrell Dodson. Willie Gay played a big fat 0 snaps on defense. And when you play in 73 snaps, the fact that he didn't play any leaves us less concerned. Now, the defensive line, we had a four-headed monster, which isn't good for any of the four. Bradley Chubb played 55% of the snaps. Jalen Phillips played 55% of the snaps. Chop Robinson, 51%. Matt Judon, 45%. I was surprised he played that much in basically his first game with the Dolphins after they signed him late in training camp here. But basically, it was an alternate. Chubb and Phillips were in, and then it was Robinson, Judon. Chop got about 4 extra snaps. Like he moved over into the inside of the line for a couple of rushes there. But in general, there was a rotation there. Luckily, Chubb got a sack, as I was saying earlier. But Chubb got 1 tackle, Phillips got 2 tackles, Chop got 1 tackle, Judon got 2 tackles. That's it. So I saw in our Kings Classic League, I have my Kings Classic shirt on today, by the way. So the owner of Jalen Phillips has already dropped him, even before we got to waivers. He saw enough. He says, with that rotation, he says, I see where this is going, and he's dropped him already. I don't know if I would be dropping him that quick. But unless there's some injuries here, Shawn, I don't know if we can rely on any of these edge rushers right now.
If you have room on the bench and want to hold on to these guys, sure. But you can't start any of them, not with this rotation going on. And with this production, 1 sack between the 4 of them against I'm not going to say it was a very good Indianapolis line, but, it's bad. It's bad right now. But injuries can happen. Maybe somebody takes over. Until then, you can drop them or you can bench them. I'm not going to fault you for either one. Just don't start them.
Exactly. Now, in the secondary, which got torched by Daniel Jones, they made Daniel Dimes look like Daniel Dollars.
Oh, man. Nice.
See where I did there.
That was good.
Now, one of the things we talked about is that when I watched the Dolphins preseason game where Minka played a lot of snaps, they were using him all over the place, and not just in that deep safety role where Pittsburgh was using him so much last year, or last several years, which was really hurting his IDP productivity. The great news, as I suspected from the preseason game, is he only played 48% deep, which, if this was 5 years ago, that would suck. But right now, that's actually really darn good. So he played 22% of the snaps in the box, 8% of the defensive line, 22% of the slot. And with that, he had 9 tackles, 6 of which were solo. He even got a pass defense as well as there. Really excited about Minka Fitzpatrick. If for some reason he went undrafted because maybe he hadn't had as much success, he is a waiver wire target for us this coming week. Ifeatu Melifonwu and Dante Trader were the 2 primary safeties for the Dolphins. Melifonwu played 68% of the snaps. Trader played 30% of the snaps. There was some rotation that was happening even more so in the second half. I think they were disappointed with some of Melifonwu's play based on some of the stuff I was reading. And, the good news is that when Melifonwu was in there, 60% of his snaps were close to the line, only 40% were deep. But of all the Dolphins, apparently, he was the one that decided to single out and pull off the field, and they put Trader in. So while there was some hope for Melifonwu, I don't think we're touching him or Trader right now. You agree with that?
Yeah, it's Minka Fitzpatrick and nobody else out of this group.
And where do you think, if Fitzpatrick continues with this kind of usage, top 12 potential, Shawn, or is that a little bit too aggressive?
If the Dolphins are going to be on the field 70 snaps a game, then he could finish number 1 here. We could get Buda Baker type numbers from last year.
Yeah, and Lord knows the Dolphins defense is going to be on the field a lot.
The offense didn't do anything to make it look like they won't.
That's exactly right. And then I won't get into all the stuff, but Not helping their offense is the allegations that came out about Tyreek Hill from his estranged wife and all. That's certainly not going to help things. He was already frustrated in week one on the sidelines. This is just ugly for the Dolphins. You and I talked in one of our shows during the offseason that Mike McDaniel was one of the first ones at risk. And boy, week one sure played out that way for the Dolphins. Okay. Just as a quick reminder, as we're going to move now to the AFC North, but Shawn and I did the start sit show. Golly, got to be careful. Start sit show this past Sunday. We'll be doing it again every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central on the IDP Plus YouTube channel. Come and check us out. A lot of great questions. And we did some education as well as part of those questions and all. So come and join us and learn some stuff and maybe get some questions answered if you have some of those that you're not sure about. We're happy to help out. Okay, moving to the Ravens. We talked about the Bills only playing 50-ish snaps, 51
Ravens
snaps.
are large, all black birds.
The Ravens played 85 snaps on defense. When your average is about 63, that means they played 22 more than the average. You would have thought that really jacked up some of the stats for the Ravens players. And so like Roquan Smith did play 100% of the snaps, but he only had 10 tackles, which is relatively low for 85 snaps. So Roquan Smith is someone who, for Dynasty, people keep on talking about him, about top 2, top 3 linebacker kind of thing. I think he's more down in that, 12 to 14 range these days, Shawn. We started seeing some of this last year, and it's continued. I think, it's kind of like Nick Bolton over the past couple of years, where his reputation kind of kept him being drafted high. Smith feels like lower in 1, higher in 2 right now.
Yeah, the last couple of years, I think he's been down about 10 and 11. I want to say in his last couple of finishes. So, yeah, I can go with that. He is kind of living off the name a little bit. I mean, still linebacker 1, so still in that top 12. So he is giving you return as a top linebacker taken. And has been less volatile as somebody like Nick Bolton or even Fred Warner at times. But yeah, not as reliable as we'd like. Like I say, especially with 85 snaps, that's insane in itself.
Yeah. Now, the number 2 linebacker position for the Ravens, you and I had a lot of discussion about it, and you weren't willing to get off the Trenton Simpson bandwagon, Shawn. But he only played 31% of the snaps. Buchanan played 34%. They were basically rotating, from series, but being pulled out in certain situations and all. But Simpson on those 31% of the snaps, which, by the way, remember they played 85 snaps, he only had 1 tackle. It was a tackle for loss. And I remember seeing that tackle and how excited he got when he got that tackle for loss. And that's all he did with all the snaps. Buchanan had 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo. So, but right now, if you combine it, that's 65% of the snaps were played between the 2 of them. We can't trust either one of these guys. I'm dropping Simpson. I'm stashing Buchanan because I think as the year progresses, I think Buchanan is going to get into that 80% range potentially. Shawn, do you agree with that or disagreeing with that?
Yeah, dynasty wise, yeah, you're definitely holding on to him. In redrafts, you can't play either one of these guys, and I would drop them both. Even in redraft, Buchanan's not doing enough at all, and we're talking later in the season, like last half, before anything is probably going to happen, outside of an injury, of course.
Yeah, great point. And my point was more from a dynasty perspective, so that's a great clarification, Shawn. Great pickup, and I got to remember to be clear on that. Moving to the defensive line, Odafe Owe, Kyle Van Noy, Mike Green, Tavius Robinson. Kyle Van Noy played the most snaps. He played 68% of the snaps. Out of the other 3, do you know who was second, Shawn?
Yeah, this was actually a big surprise because I actually seen this yesterday when they released the numbers and all, or I guess it was earlier today. Yeah, Tavius Robinson.
Tavius Robinson had the second most snaps, and he was the most productive by far. Van Noy had 1 tackle, which was unassisted. Excuse me, Owe had 1 tackle, which was unassisted. He did get a quarterback hit. Van Noy had 3 tackles, which only 1 was solo and a quarterback hit. Mike Green had 1 tackle. He only played 31% of the snaps. But Tavius Robinson, with his 56% of the snaps, had 5 total tackles, 4 of which were solo, 1 was assisted. Now, no big plays, no sacks, no tackles for loss, but the playing time being that high, along with the productivity. Tavius Robinson, are you targeting him on the waiver wire, Shawn?
I don't think so, just because I think this game obviously is a bit of an anomaly with the 85 snaps. And then just playing against Josh Allen in general, they had to do something different. First game of the year, we usually see a little more rotation out of the defensive line anyway, just because not everybody's conditioned just yet. So I'm going to need to see a
Not
little
everyone's a
more.
Matt Crosby.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Mad Max is his own is in his own category there. So I'm glad to see this again before I would take a shot at Robinson.
So in deep leagues, and I'm talking deep leagues,
Mm,
I would, depending on what I've got on the edge, I might consider stashing him depending on what I'm dropping. But if I don't have
right.
a drop, I'm not dropping anybody. But um, if I had Jalen Phillips,
Ooh, that's that's tough.
yeah, I might consider that for Jalen Phillips, folks. So just
I
want to
would.
plant the seed, give y'all something to think about. All right, on the secondary side, we're going to move on in the interest of time here. Um, Kyle Hamilton played 98% of the snaps. There was a little bit of a fear when he headed to the locker room. They taped up his hand. No reports have come out yet, but he did go back into the game after they taped up. It was actually some fingers, I believe. He looked like he was all over the place, but I was shocked to see that he had played still 49% of the snaps at free safety, 2% wide, and ended up at outside corner when he followed somebody out there. So basically 50% outside of the box, but 50% in the box because he seemed like he was all over the place in the field. He's just a special talent and all. And he is a top three, top four type of safety for us. Malachi Starks. This was a question that someone actually posted, or I should say a comment. They were like, they were in love with Mike Green, the rookie. They were in love with Malachi Starks, the rookie. But rookies in IDP, folks, don't generally get off to a fast start. And Green only played 31% of the snaps, as we talked about. Starks played 99% of the snaps, but 63% of them were deep. And with that, surprisingly, though, he had 7 tackles, 3 which were solo. Now, contributing to that was 85 total snaps. If you kind of normalize that, it probably brings it down to about 5 tackles. So, even with those numbers, be careful about jumping on the Malachi Starks bandwagon, folks. That's how we'll wrap up the Baltimore Ravens, and we will now move over to the Cincinnati Bengals, who played 76 snaps against the Cleveland Browns. And if the Cleveland Browns offense can keep the Bengals defense on the field for 76 snaps, now I know the Browns defense did a number on the Bengals offense in the second half as well, but the Bengals defense is not going to be very good. Don't let this score and the output let you think, oh, they didn't show much in the preseason and blah, blah, blah. I think this is going to be a rough year for the Bengals defense. But let's talk about what they did with 76 snaps. Now, Logan Wilson only played 84% of the snaps. He left for a concussion check. He came back in. Barrett Carter was the one that came and took his place while he was off the field. So if you're wondering for who's the quote handcuff linebacker for Logan Wilson, there you go. Demetrius Knight played 76% of the snaps. Very productive line, 10 tackles, 8 of which were solo, and throw a pass defense in there. Now he came off in passing situations, which hopefully that can be rectified over time. But right now, 76% of the snaps doesn't make me feel good, Shawn, on Demetrius Knight.
No, he was super efficient with those snaps. You can't count on that every week unless he's the second coming of Darius Leonard, which I'm almost certain he is not. So there's considerable risk in Knight. He's playable in very deep leagues, but anything less than I'd say 4 starting linebackers, you really shouldn't start him.
Yeah. The one thing he's got going for him is I think they will be on the field for 74, 76, 72 snaps a game, which will help him a little bit. But to your point, hard to play him except that it's in deeper leagues because of that risk for sure. And who knows? I've been wrong once, I believe, on some of these forecasts, and maybe the Bengals defense is better than I'm saying. Troy Hendrickson, considering he held out and missed most of preseason, played 75% of the snaps, surprisingly. Got 3 tackles, which was nice to see, including a sack and 3 quarterback hits. Now, the other great thing to see is it seemed like Hubbard was always on the left side defensive end. Hendrickson was always on the right last year. But I saw Hendrickson being used on both sides of the defense, which I think was a nice breath of fresh air. And maybe they'll move him around to take advantage of weaker linemen, which could help his productivity even more. Maybe even give him a few more tackles than we've seen from Hendrickson in the past. Agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Also, with all the young guys we got trying to rotate in here, Osai, Stewart, Murphy, just probably to see where they're better at too. But yeah, to move him around will create more mismatches, especially with an offensive line. Is if somebody gets injured and they move him over, then you're exploiting a weakness. So that's really good uh, usage for Trey Hendrickson going forward. Yeah, I like that.
No, I have not been a Joseph Osai fan, and part of the reason was he did finish the year strong, particularly with sacks, but his pass rush win rate was not very good.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit down on him for that. And he played 63% of snaps, only 1 tackle. Shamar Stewart, the rookie, played 49% of the snaps, and he had a goose egg, nada, nothing kind of thing. It's going to take him some time, folks. Once again, a rookie. We got to be patient. Miles Murphy, let's just call him a first round bust, folks. 29% of the snaps is all we got from him. He should have been dropped a long time ago if you have him in Dynasty. One other name I want to call out, B.J. Hill from the defensive line, 59% of the snaps, great productivity. He's healthy this year, 7 tackles, including a sack as well. 3 of those are solo, 4 assists. They're going to need him desperately. He's going to be on the field a decent amount. B.J. Hill in defensive tackle required leagues really, really like. Moving to the defensive secondary, Dax Hill was your primary slot corner. He started out wide with Cam Taylor-Britt, and whenever the other team went to 3 wide, the other team being the Browns, he moved to the slot, and DJ Turner came in on the outside. So Dax Hill ended up playing, let's see here, 46% of his snaps in the slot. He ended up also having some box snaps and some D-line snaps. So he only played 22% out wide. Let's just leave it at that. So great usage within the box. He played 97% of the snaps. Dax Hill, these cornerbacks that start on the outside and move into the slot in the 3 wides from an education perspective, showing very valuable for our listeners to understand, correct?
For sure. We've seen it succeed year after year, actually.
Yeah, Kenny Moore is a great example of that.
Yeah. Yep.
One of the things that makes him so valuable. Although we'll talk about him a little bit later and how he was utilized. It was a pleasant surprise there. On the secondary side of things, Jordan Battle played 100% of the snaps. Geno Stone, 88. Tyson Anderson came in for 7 snaps, and I didn't see where Geno Stone was injured in any way, shape, or form. So this would be curious to see if, sort of like the Melifano situation, was there unhappy with Stone for some reason, or was there an injury that I missed somewhere in there? From utilization of Stone, he played 84% of his snaps deep at free safety. That's not what we want, folks. And so with that, and I just lost my numbers for a second. Here we go. With that, he still had 5 tackles, but I think part of it was because one was solo, 4 were assisted, so not that great. But there was, once again, the 76 snaps certainly helped. Jordan Battle had 12 tackles, 5 of which were solo, 7 assists, and he got a pass defense. But he played 70% of them deep. That is very concerning. Are you chasing those Battle numbers? And Shawn shaking his head yes up and down. If you can't tell which way the marbles are going, tell everybody why with going after Battle and that productivity, even playing 70% of the snaps deep, Shawn.
Yeah, it's because he's productive on those snaps, and he did it at last year. I think he got hurt there towards the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I do know when he finally got a full share of snaps, when he quit rotating around and became a full-time starter, he was producing, and that was playing deep last year as well. So I'm absolutely chasing these points, and I've already got him stashed in quite a few leagues. So he was a guy I was looking for later in drafts when I wanted to go linebacker heavy, edge heavy, and wanted to drop my safeties down. So I wasn't chasing Buda Baker, I wasn't chasing Derwin James. I was looking for somebody I could pick up later. To find this type of productivity. Jordan Battles is one of those guys, and we're going to talk about some other guys here that I was able to get late too that's really paying off right now. So, but yeah, Jordan Battle, he's in a great spot. The rest of the team isn't great. Defense is going to be on the field a lot. So I think he's going to be able to produce every week.
All righty. Moving to the Steelers, they played 64 snaps, right around the average. Patrick Queen had a typical Patrick Queen line, 100% of the snaps, 8 tackles, 5 of which were solo, and he got a quarterback hit. Peyton Wilson, a real debate we had in the offseason. I was on the bandwagon that this was going to be the year that the second linebacker might get closer to 100%. He didn't quite get to there. He got to 88%. Now, I'd like to have seen more productivity out of those stats. He only had 5 tackles, but he did get a tackle for loss and a quarterback hit. The max that he played last year was 58%. So really excited about Peyton Wilson, and hopefully the efficiency will come along with the snap counts in the efficiency/productivity. Malik Harrison played 4 snaps. He left the game with a knee injury. Would Peyton Wilson maybe have played less if that didn't happen? Possibly, but Cole Holcomb never played a single snap on defense after Malik Harrison got hurt. So Peyton Wilson, we're not starting him quite yet, but definitely on the radar and someone we want to keep an eye on. Moving to the defensive line, it was a TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith playing 88 and 89% of the snaps respectively. Nick Herbig was inactive, so he wasn't there to rotate with him. They did use Jack Sawyer a little bit to rotate with him, but not as much as Herbig would typically be used. When they had the Herbig and Preston Smith last year backing him up, they played a little bit less than the 88 and 89. So I expect that to come down a little bit, but not too much. Watt had 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss in pass defense. Highsmith led up the board with 8 tackles, 5 of which were solo. He had a sack, and he also had 3 quarterback hits, and of course a tackle for loss that came with the sack. So Highsmith looked really, really good. Moving to the secondary, lots of interesting things here happened. First, Deshaun Elliott got hurt, and he left the game with an injury, and he played basically 31% of the snaps deep, which means he played the other 69 close to the line of scrimmage, which was fantastic. Chuck Clark comes in and replaces him, but then later in the game, Juan Thornhill left the game. He only played 84% of the snaps. Brandon Echols came in. Echols is more of an outside cornerback, and that's mostly where Echols played. So Clark moved into a little bit more of that Thornhill role when that happened as well. And then you had the Jalen Ramsey situation where he played 64% near the line, but he also took a few more cornerback snaps out wide once Joey Porter hurt his hamstring. Now, I've been on the Jalen Ramsey bandwagon that in that star position, he's going to finish as a top 5 cornerback. But if Porter or some of these other cornerbacks are out and he's the first choice to go in for him, that could be a problem for the stat generation if he's playing the outside corner and not as much in the star. And then to convolute it all, if you got Thornhill sort of hurt and you got Elliott hurt, who they've already announced will miss at least week 2, if not more, they go and sign Jabril Peppers. So, Shawn, who's going to start at safety for the Steelers this coming week? And who do you want out of Chuck Clark, Jabril Peppers, Juan Thornhill?
Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark are going to start. I was actually really pleased with Thornhill's production, but Chuck Clark is the guy I'm picking up on waivers this week. I feel comfortable starting him. I think the Steelers do too. Jabril Peppers is depth. The only other safety they had was Miles Killebrew, who is more of a special teams ace. So behind Thornhill and Chuck Clark, nothing. So I see Peppers as purely depth for an emergency, usage. I don't see him leapfrogging either one of these guys.
All right, very interesting. So you're not buying the Mike Tomlin coach speak from today, where he talked about the fact that he wished he could have drafted Peppers and blah blah blah, and how he scouted him and how they used him in so many places. He basically kind of talked about him like he talked about Jalen Ramsey and so forth. So in the short term, I'm with you. But as the weeks progress, this will be something interesting to watch, particularly when Deshaun Elliott comes back as well.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see. And by the way, on 50% of the snaps, Clark had 8 tackles. So very productive. So I'm with you in terms of going after Chuck Clark. That's who I want from this team. Going to the Browns next, who only played 52 snaps. Remember, the Bengals played so many on defense. That means the Browns didn't play as much. You'll see a lot of this ends up averaging. When you tie it to the together, divide by 2, or it comes up in that 63-ish range oftentimes. But Carson Schlesinger played 100% of the snaps, 8 tackles on 52 snaps, including tackle for loss and a quarterback hit. We got to be as excited about the rookie here in week 1, Shawn.
Yeah, absolutely. He's everything we hoped he'd be.
Yeah. Devin Bush, the clear number 2 linebacker at 75% of the snaps. He had 7 tackles on those limited snaps, very productive, and he also had a pass defense and a quarterback hit. Still no word about a potential suspension. So as of now, he's the number 2 linebacker. Baker played 27% of the snaps. Diabate got in for 17% of the snaps on defense, but clearly Bush was number 2. On the defensive line, wow, Myles Garrett played 87% of the snaps. You don't see too many edges. You see the Garretts, the Crosbys, the Watts, et cetera, playing those kind of snaps. And he was freaking awesome with 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. He was just all typical Myles Garrett. He's going to have a hell of a year, I think. He's going to earn that big contract they gave him. And then the other one, which I want you to comment on, Shawn, Isaiah McGuire played the second most snaps on the edge. He played 56% of the snaps. And remember, they only played 52. And with that, he had 6 tackles, 4 of which were solo. He had a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and then 2 quarterback hits. Now, since his O-line is not that great, and of course, Myles Garrett and Mason Graham and some of these other guys were surely freeing him up, but that's going to continue all year. Is McGuire someone you're considering picking up when you hear some of these numbers?
Yeah, especially if he can do it again. He's definitely on my radar here. I am concerned that it was against Cincinnati's O-line, and then I believe it was Lucas Patrick when he left. I believe he's a guard, and that's when these sacks really started popping off later in that game. So I think that had a little bit of a direct impact on these guys as well. So if they pull this off again, then yeah, he's absolutely on the team. But yeah, you said it with Garrett on one end, Mason Graham filling up the middle. This defensive line looks really good, and McGuire is definitely the top one to target here.
Right. And then there was no real clear nickel cornerback to talk about on the Browns that played anything of any significance. But at the safety position, Delpit and Hickman both played 100% of the snaps. What I want you to take away is that Delpit played 79% of his snaps close to the line. The disappointing part is he only had 4 freaking tackles. Now, part of that was that they had only played 52 snaps once again, but that was really disappointing for how close he played to the line. And I didn't see him. Now, I didn't get to watch the whole game, folks, but I didn't see him getting blitzed or used along those lines. So I just wish Schwartz would do that like he was used like in college, because he was some awesome at LSU when he used him that way.
I think it's because the defensive line was so dominant that they were racking up the tackles. They were getting the pressure. So a lot of those plays were just errant passes or thrown away, or he's, just getting sacked. So there wasn't a lot to go around. Only 52 snaps too. So don't panic on Grant Delpit. We expect these numbers to go back up.
Yeah. Now, Hickman, on the other hand, played 75% of the snaps deep. And we're not going to touch Ronnie Hickman, are we, Shawn?
Don't need him.
Don't need him. Even though he had 5 tackles, we're not interested in him.
Nope.
Oh, all right, now we're going to move to the AFC South. And we're going to try and pick up the pace a little bit here, folks. But there's so much information for week 1. And while this might run longer than we originally anticipated, we want to give you the knowledge that you need. You can jump around if you want to hear, because we're going to timestamp the different divisions if there's certain teams you want to look into and all. But we're going to try and get it all out there for you. Okay, so we'll pick up the pace a little bit, but we're not going to skip a lot of these key points here. Give us feedback on the IDP Plus YouTube channel on the length, things you liked, things we can cut out, etc. Okay. Good news, the Texans, we have two linebackers that we can start, at least based on week one. Um, Al Shire played 100% of the snaps, and Henry Toto played 95% of the snaps. Both would be playable with those kind of numbers. By the way, I can't remember if I mentioned they played 60 snaps, just to be clear, so a little bit less than average. Christian Harris only played 5 snaps, EJ Speed 3. EJ Speed's droppable. I still love me some Christian Harris, and if I have a deep enough bench, I want to keep him because if Alshire gets hurt, as he tends to do, or if Harris really gets healthy and active and all, maybe we see some Harris level even over Toto. And if Harris gets to play those snaps that Toto is playing, I'd be really happy. In the secondary, Gardner Johnson played 100% of snaps. Bullock played 100%. Jalen Petrie, the slot cornerback, played 92% of the snaps. So good usage across all three. They really don't have much depth in the Houston secondary. Shawn?
No, they do not. They lost Jimmy Ward, I think, to suspension, or I believe it's suspension, or he's in that process. But yeah, outside of these guys, there's nothing.
Yeah. MJ Stewart, I would not consider a backup. And when Derek Stingley went out, there was a bit of a panic here, and they went to Jalen Smith, the rookie, but luckily Stingley went back into the game after a few snaps. So Gardner Johnson only played 23% of the snaps deep, so he was 77% close to the line. Now, he only had 4 tackles, 2 of which were solo. Kalen Bullock played 82% of the snaps deep, so we've talked about that in the past, that Gardner Johnson close to the line, Bullock was going to play deep. He didn't get an interception. I'm still counting on him to be the interception leader this year. So that's still my bet right now. And Bullock only came out with 3 tackles as a result. So that's your Houston Texans there. Let's move to the Jaguars, and boy, there's some interesting stuff to talk about on the Jaguars. They played 64 snaps, and we're going to start at the linebacker position, which is why, holy cow. We warn everybody that there's this risk of this Devin Lloyd, Ventrell Miller rotation based on what we're seeing, and maybe even Ventrell Miller leapfrogging Devin Lloyd. Well, it was a combination of Devin Lloyd, Ventrell Miller, Dennis Gardeck, and Andrew Wingard or Wingard, depending on who you ask. I'm not 100% sure which way to say that. That kind of played into that role. So Foye played 100% of the snaps. So Luakan, we were good. And he had 10 tackles and pass defense. And he also had an interception. And I believe he had a forced fumble as well, if I remember correctly. Devin Lloyd only played 34% of the snaps. Ventrell Miller played 25% of the snaps. Dennis Gardeck was out there in some dime situations and played 27% of the snaps. Needless to say, the productivity from any of those three was not so good. And by the way, Wingard, for perspective, played basically 98% of the snaps. He played 23 of those snaps in the box, 6 along the D line, 14 in the slot. And he only played 30% deep. So jumping around a little bit, but Wingard is someone we're going to definitely target on the safety side, particularly when you look at his 8 tackles, 4 which were solo, 4 which were assisted tackles. But Lloyd, Miller, Gardeck, are we patient with any of these guys? Or are we dropping in for some of these other names that we talked about, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm not holding on to anybody in this. It doesn't even add up to a full 100% of the snaps. So even if it's Lloyd or Miller or Gard, if you just get rid of 2 and still have 1, it was still not even a full-time start. So it's a mess, an absolute mess. You trust Foye, you drop, trade, whatever you can do, get rid of the others. You pick up somebody else out there.
Absolutely. So that's. I thought everybody would be interested in those details, and so I went a little bit long on that. But want y'all to understand, those guys are comatose, like a better term.
Yeah.
Moving on the different defensive line, Josh Hines Allen plays 72% of snaps. Trayvon Walker plays 75%. Great snap utilization. Not much productivity. In my notes, I typed the word "ugh" for both of them. So hopefully, with those snap counts, that'll improve as we move forward. The Panthers' offensive line is not that great, and their offense isn't that great. So I was a little bit disappointed to see those numbers. At the safety position, Eric Murray played 97% of the snaps. I mentioned Wingard played 98%. But Darnell Savage played 44% of the snaps. They played a decent amount of three safeties looks out there, and part of it was when Savage came in is when Wingard went closer to the line. So once again making Wingard very productive. Now Savage had a goose egg, nada, nothing, zero in the 28 snaps that he played. Darnell Savage has always been bad for IDP. Maybe there was one year he was decent, but for the most part,
Decent.
so we don't want Darnell Savage, folks. Okay, and so but Murray played 69% of the snaps deep. So that means he was only 30% close to line. So not very encouraging, even though he had 7 tackles, 3 of which were solo, and a couple of pass defense. He didn't get a quarterback yet. I'll ask you about him in a second, Shawn. Just to wrap up on the cornerback side of things, Jordan Lewis was a starting cornerback along with Tyson Campbell. When 3 cornerbacks happened, Jerry and Jones came in with an exception. Jordan Lewis was the slot. Lewis ended up playing 100% of the snaps as a result. And Lewis had 5 tackles. He also had 3 pass defenses and a quarterback hit and a fumble recovery and an interception. Jordan Lewis, in the way that they're using him, very, very productive, very, very good. Travis Hunter, for those wondering, he played 6 snaps on defense, 5 on the outside, 1 in the slot. So for folks looking for that extra IDP stuff, he really didn't do anything. He had one assisted tackle. So he didn't really add anything to the wide receiver slide. Now, I said I want to go back to Eric Murray. So, Shawn, is Eric Murray someone you're willing to target with those stats that he had, even though he's playing 69% of the time deep?
I'm more hesitant on Murray, just with the production of Wingard and seeing how he was utilized, similar to Josh Metellus over in Minnesota, back when they would go 3 deep. One of the safeties come up to be more of a linebacker, and I think it's what we're getting here in Jacksonville. So I would much rather have him over Murray. If I'm in a deep enough league, I would take a shot at him, but it's more of a start 3 to 4 safety type of deal. That I feel like it's not going to be trustable production, at least not yet. And if it happens again next week, sure.
Okay. All right. The Titans played 76 snaps. And by the way, we will be here next week to let you know how that went for Eric Murray. All right. The Titans played 76 snaps. Cody Barton had a typical Cody Barton line for playing 100% of 76 snaps. He had 9 tackles, 5 of which were solo, 4 of which were assisted. That's a typical Cody Barton line. The real news, Cedric Gray was the number 2 linebacker next to Barton, but he only played 82% of the snaps. Now, he did have 8 tackles, 5 of those were solo, but only 82%. Typically, like last year, that second linebacker spot played 100% of the snaps. He did not. We saw some more 3 safety stuff with Quandre Diggs rotating in. And interestingly enough, Amani Hooker played a significant amount of snaps closer to the line. I'll come back to that in a second. James Williams, who Gray was battling with for the starting linebacker position, played 0 snaps. Goose egg, nada, zilch, none of the above. All of the above. Excuse me. He did nothing on defense. It was only on special teams. Shawn, Kaiser White still sitting up on the practice squad. The fact that they had Cedric Gray only playing 82% of snaps. Any concern yet about Kaiser White or not quite yet?
No, I don't think so. I think it was by design to have more safeties on the field. It seems to be the way a lot of teams want to go now. And we knew Cedric Gray struggled in coverage a bit. Super productive against the run tackling machine. 8 tackles on only 82% of the snaps. That's pretty good. And then they drafted Kevin Winston. They brought in Quandre Diggs back last year. He was there, got hurt in the offseason. They end up bringing him back. I think it's by design. They want to use more safeties here. It's a bit disappointing on the usage for Gray, but I'm not worried about Kaiser White yet.
Okay. And by the way, I agree with you because when they first signed Quandre Diggs, I was wondering why they're bringing him in. Now, he only played 41% of the snaps and had three tackles in that time, while Hooker and Woods played 100% of the snaps. But let's talk about alignment because I alluded to it earlier. Hooker only played 30% of snaps deep. 70% of his snaps were close to the line of scrimmage. Now, I would love to see more productivity than the five total tackles, three of which were solo and one pass defense with that kind of utilization. But I think if they're going to use him like that, when they bring using the third safety on the field, I think that's going to be really, really good for Hooker's usage this year. Woods, on the other hand, played 60% of the snaps deep, 59 if you want to be exact. And Diggs was 74% of the snaps that when he was on the field, he played deep. So you can see how that utilization is happening there. Roger McCreary was the primary nickel cornerback. He played 45% of the snaps. He had five tackles, and you might have seen that he also got an interception, which means he got a pass defense as well. So good for Roger McCreary. But 45% of the snaps, we'll have to kind of watch that now. The Broncos did play a decent amount of three wide. I didn't go look at the exact numbers and all. So I was hoping for maybe a little bit more than 45% of the snaps. So we'll have to watch that on that kind of usage. Hard to want to play McCreary. These nickels, when they do play, we're hoping for at least 70% or more kind of thing. On the defensive line, Jeff Simmons was an absolute beast. Played 84% of the snaps at defensive tackle, which is just freaking amazing. Four tackles, including a sack, but four quarterback hits. Just like Quinton Williams we talked about earlier, Jeff Simmons was a little bit disappointing last year. Hopefully both of those two guys with this great start can continue that momentum for the year. On the defensive edge side of things, interestingly enough, Draymond Jones played the most snaps at 76%. Femi Oladejo, the second-round rookie from UCLA, who there was discussions that he was struggling during training camp, learning the new position because he had been mostly an off-ball linebacker until late in his career at UCLA in college. He actually played 70% of the snaps, more than Arden Keys, who had 61, and Jahad Ward only played 21%. I am not on the bandwagon. And look, unfortunately, none of these guys really did anything from a productivity perspective. All of them had two tackles, except for Key only had one. There's only one quarterback hit out of that whole group. So not much there. We're not chasing any of these guys, are we, Shawn?
No, not yet. Femi, somebody to look to the future, but we're
Maybe
talking.
a guy, a dynasty guy, Shawn.
Yeah, hang on. I had a little issue with my headset here. Yeah, Dynasty wise, yeah, he's somebody that they've actually been talking up quite a bit here lately over the last couple of weeks in the camps and all. So it's actually encouraging to see him get the usage he did this weekend. Maybe by the end of the season, we see him really take off. But yeah, Dynasty hold, redraft, no.
Now, here's my second public service announcement. Don't panic when there's a game that has a blowout because you could make some really bad moves. And the Colts Dolphins game was an example of that blowout. Yes, the Colts played 60 snaps on defense, just slightly below average. But the game was such a blowout. Zaire Franklin only played 81% of the snaps in total. Now, he played 100% of the snaps until the game got out of hand, and then he took the rest of the day off, or they gave him the rest of the day off. Joe Bacci played 59% of the snaps before garbage time. He was the number 2 starting linebacker, but he ended up rotating after all with Cam McGrone, which was a little bit of a surprise and a lot of a disappointment. They both in total played 46% of the snaps, although Bacci did play, I said Bacci earlier, Bacci did play a little bit more earlier on, even though they rotated some. But in mop-up time, it was McGrone and Austin Ajaki, I'm not sure how to say the name. Those are the two that kind of cleaned that up, that got, Bocce and McGrone both at that 46% total. But we can't play Bocce with these kind of numbers at 59%, even though we thought there'd be huge opportunities. Now, he did have 6 tackles. Now, one was solo, 5 were assisted. Maybe you could find someone who's not paying attention and try to quickly dump him, but I think there's someone you could probably quickly dump for maybe some of these other linebackers we talked about or that we're going to talk about a little bit later, like Darius Muasau. Shawn?
Yeah, you can't play either one of these guys. Yep. If they're not on the field, they can't give me the tackles I need. So, yeah, definitely try to get off them if you can. Don't panic about Zaire Franklin. We do expect numbers to be down this year, but uh, he should be better next week. He'll have an actual opponent to keep him on the field.
And another thing to keep in mind is from a Dolphin, if your team, if you have a linebacker that's playing against the Dolphins
Yeah.
and you have other options, you might go with the other option because if it's a blowout like this one was, the same situation like what happened with Zaire this week could happen to your linebacker. So keep that in mind if you have somebody playing the Dolphins there. Okay. On the safety side of things, Nick Cross has a chance to have similar stats to last year, but not quite as good because he's not going to get as much close to the line as he did um, last year. This game, granted, it got a little bit out of hand and all, and the Dolphins, they were really trying to take away that middle of the field. So we'll see how this plays out. But as of now, 49% of the snaps were either free safety or a few ended up at outside corner for him. He was playing many more snaps closer to the box last year. Cam Bynum played 82% of the snaps deep. That's a major ugh for him. Now, Kenny Moore, I was worried that Kenny Moore was going to be starting on the outside and then move into the slot. He didn't play a single snap at outside corner. He played 94% of the snaps, and all of them were close to the line. He played 4 on the defensive line, 7 on the box, and 33 in the slot. So that bodes very well for Kenny Moore. Now, with his age, I'm still concerned of a cornerback turning into his 30s, folks. And he did get a strip sack fumble. I get it. But at that age, he's off to a good start. But someone I'm a little bit leery of, Shawn.
Yeah, the age thing is the biggest thing here, but his utilization was, yeah, like I said, way better than what we thought we were going to get. So that's very encouraging. If you did draft him early as a cornerback required leagues, you got to feel good about it. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on his productivity. And if he starts dropping off, cornerback, cut him, find someone else.
Yeah. Now moving to the AFC West, where the Chiefs played 65 snaps on defense against the Chargers. Bolton played 100%, which was great to see. That was really, really encouraging. And he had 8 tackles, okay? So nothing else special, but seeing Bolton getting that kind of snaps when in the past we had this rotation thing going on that Steve Spagnuolo would do, that could bode well. It was week 1. We'll see if it continues, but good news there. Drew Tranquil played 83% of the snaps, but he was playing almost every snap until he got hurt for a period of time, which is something that Tranquil tends to happen. But at least he got back into the game, and he ended up having 5 tackles, 4 which were solo, and he got 2 sacks. So good news for Tranquil here. Something we want to keep an eye on. If they're going to use Bolton and Tranquil as 90+% of the time, that could be good news for both of those folks. But the real news for the Chiefs is Chamari Connor, who played 98% of the snaps, led the team with 10 tackles. He also forced a fumble. He's got to be probably the top waiver wire at safety if he's out there. Because if you look at how he was used, granted, he did play 20% of the snaps at free safety, but he played 20 in the box, 30 in the slot, 1 in the D line. Trent McDuffie, for the most part, only went to slot on 4 wide type of situations, which was like 11 snaps, I believe, in total. So Chamari Connor looks like he's well positioned. And Jaden Hicks only played 60% of the snaps. And as much as we love Jaden Hicks, we think he's droppable. Talk about Connor and Hicks, Shawn.
I still think there's a chance Hicks leads the team in interceptions again, but again, with only 60% of the snaps, you can't count on that kind of production there. So, Jabari Connor, I can guarantee you, if you're in a league with me, he is not out there on the waivers. That's one of the guys I was getting late that I mentioned earlier. He's one of the other guys I was talking about. Fantastic production for him, and it looks to be what we've seen in the preseason. that looks like it's the trend. It's not just a one game fad here. So super excited about him. Got a real shot at being one of the. If he keeps this up, we're looking at a potential top 5 guy at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Now, the Chargers played 61 snaps on defense. The Chiefs played 65. If you average that out, 63. There's a theme here, Shawn. To once again, part of the education for folks. Deion Henley played 100% of the snaps, and he had a great line with 8 tackles and a sack, which is fantastic. Which, as we talked about earlier, for those that may have jumped around, when we say sack, that means they got a sack, a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit. That all comes with it. Denzel Perriman played 8 snaps. And we
Shocked.
even joked about this on our last show about how many games will it be before Perriman gets hurt, and we joked about. I think we said maybe 4 games. In the very first game, in the first quarter, he comes up with a high ankle sprain. Ends up playing 8 snaps. Troy Dye came in for him. Now, what's interesting is Perriman played 13% of the snaps. Troy Dye played 54. That adds up to 67. Nowhere near where we want a linebacker 2 from a snap count perspective. So while Dye will be up there, people will be anxious to go and pick him up. If you're spending fab dollars, I wouldn't be spending a lot. And in fact, I'd be happy to let somebody else take him. Not that Dye can be productive, but just if you're going to play 70% of the snaps or so, 75, 60, 75, whatever, not what we're looking for. Shawn?
No, they use a lot of safeties here with Molden, James, and Aloha Gilman. Kind of eats into that second linebacker position. Even in deep leagues, you might stash him on the bench if you got room, but unless something happens to Henley or they start running more 2 linebacker sets, it's not worth it. He'd have to be super productive for his snaps. In other words, he would have to severely outproduce his usage to warrant being a starter on your team, and you can't ask for that.
And building on your point of how they use safeties, particularly Mr. Derwin James, who only played 12% of his snaps either at free safety or out wide, which means 88% of his snaps were close to the line. And with that, he had 7 tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits. But if he's going to be playing that much close to the line, we're excited about Derwin James. And if you don't own him, he's an absolute trade target because remember we were talking earlier in the show about, if we can have people with 50% or so close to the line, playing either that D-line or box or slot role, we're thrilled. He's at 88%, folks. Not many doing that. Kyle Hamilton was in that 50% range even, okay? So go after Derwin James. That would be my advice for you. Gilman played 70% of his snaps deep. Molden played 84% of his snaps deep. So now Gilman led the team with 9 tackles, 4 of which were solo. We talked about Jordan Battle and playing a lot of snaps deep. Gilman played roughly a similar number, but I don't think we feel as good about Gilman as we did with Battle, right, Shawn?
Yeah, not as good here. This has more to do with it being against the Chiefs. So I think this was just a bit of an outlier here for him to get his high tackles. Chiefs were behind there at the end, and they were having to pass a lot deep, so he got a lot of those tackles. Keep an eye on him, but don't go chasing him.
Right. And then at the cornerback position, Tarheeb Still was the slot cornerback, but he also was a starter on the outside. So there was Dante Jackson and Tarheeb Still on the outside. And then when they went to 3 wide, Still moved to the slot. Cam Hart came in. So if you had Cam Hart based on some of his productivity from last year, you can certainly drop him because he only played 64% of the snaps. He'll still play 98%. Okay. So that is how to chase the Chargers slot cornerback. It is Tarheeb Still. Moving on to the Broncos, who only played 57 snaps against the Titans. At linebacker, Singleton played 100% of the snaps, only had 6 tackles, only 2 which were solo. He did get 1 pass defense. Now, I'm off the Alex Singleton train, as Shawn has heard me talk about age coming off the ACL, etc. Granted, it was only 57% of the snaps, 57 snaps, excuse me. but only 6 tackles isn't that great for Singleton based on in the past. Justin Sterner played the number 2 linebacker role, with Dre Greenlaw being inactive. Hopefully, Greenlaw um, is active this coming week. Shawn, the question I have for you on this linebacker crew is when Greenlaw comes back, do you think he is 100% like Singleton is? Or do you think there's something else that happens there based on what we see in Sterner as a number 2 linebacker, only playing 67% this week?
My guess is no, he will not be 100%. But he could work his way up to it. I think, especially with the injury history he's had and the struggles he's had this offseason, they're going to want to ease him in. But then maybe he can get up into the high 80s, 90s, or something like that. But it doesn't look like there's 2 full-time linebackers here.
So, this is one we've agreed on pretty much everything today. This is one I slightly disagree with you. I do think where I do agree with your point is that he will be eased in, but I think as the year progresses, they pay too much money for him to not be 100% linebacker. And if anything, I think Singleton might be more at risk if a linebacker comes off the field than Greenlaw. So that'll be just something interesting to watch as the year goes on. Okay, moving to the defensive line. Basically, you had a Jonathan Cooper, Dondre Tillman rotation, and a Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis rotation. Um, Bonito was 61% and Ellis was 40%. Cooper was 65%. Tillman was 33%. Now there's some rounding there, etc. Okay, but Bonito looked like he was already earning that new contract. Jonah Ellis had 3 tackles, 3 which were solo, and he got a sack. My guess is on the waiver wire, Jonah Ellis is going to be one of those defensive ends for points scored that's going to be sitting near the top. And I love Jonah Ellis for Dynasty. But right after they signed Bonito to that extension, and they've already signed Cooper to an extension, I let Ellis go to pick up. I forgot who else I picked up because he's just not, unless there's an injury, he's just not going to get the playing time. I might regret this at some point, but that's how I'm feeling about Ellis. I love Ellis, the player. I love the Ellis family. But right now, he's just not going to get the playing time. But a bunch of people are going to pick him up because they're going to see the points and they're going to see him at the top. Don't fall into that trap, right, Shawn?
Exactly. And remember, this is against the Tennessee Titans, who last year, if you were a defensive end playing against the Titans, you were startable. They give up a lot of sacks. I think they gave up 6, maybe 7 this past weekend. So that's still holding true. Rookie quarterback, still a questionable offensive line. If they're playing the Titans, start them.
And to that point, it was actually the team had 6 sacks and 12 quarterback hits. Latham, the rookie who they moved from left tackle to right tackle, left the game early. Journeyman Ole Yuda, I think that's how you pronounce the last name, went in for him. Moore, who they signed in free agency, was a left tackle. And he's solid, but certainly not spectacular.
Yeah.
And so, yes, this was also against the Titans, which is a great point, Shawn. At the safety position, Hufanga and Brandon Jones. Hufanga played 56% deep, and Brandon Jones played 67% deep. Brandon Jones played a little bit less deep last year, and he had more of that PJ Locke playing a little bit deeper. This could have an impact to Brandon Jones' numbers this year. Granted, it's 1 week. We don't want to panic yet. But if this continues, now Brandon Jones did have 7 tackles, which was great, but Hufanga had 10. Hufanga had 7 of his 10 were solo, where Jones had 3 solo of his 7 tackles. A little bit nervous about Brandon Jones there. At the slot cornerback position, there was a rotation between Jaquan McMillan and Jahdae Barron. Barron was the rookie who everybody thought, including myself, was going to jump immediately into that starting slot cornerback role, and it didn't happen. McMillan beat him out, supposedly, during the training camp. But game 1, there's this rotation where McMillan plays 54% of the snaps, Barron plays 37% of the snaps. It just feels like they're easing their way in for Barron, giving him some learning opportunities. Eventually, he's going to replace McMillan. McMillan in his time, and he's usually pretty productive. He had 2 tackles, but he did get a sack. I still love Jahdae Barron, but I'm not ready to put him in my lineup. And I don't really like stashing cornerbacks deep on my roster. Shawn, you agree with that? So someone
Yeah.
so if we see him going 100%, but not necessarily stashing deep on our bench right now.
Yeah, I do not stash corners unless they are some kind of cheat code where they're actually playing safety and have a corner designation. Outside of that, I'm not stashing a corner. I want some of these other linebackers or safeties on there. So Dynasty, yeah, you can hold on to him, but yeah, redraft, you're not playing him. McMillan's even questionable right now. Not a lot of tackle production there. The sack was nice, but we're going to need to see a little more tackles here, or else he's unplayable as well. Riley Moss is the guy you really want on this team.
Riley Moss played 100% of the snaps at cornerback, folks, and so and 51 were outside. So and he, and once again, there was a lot of staying away from Surtain and a lot of targeting towards Riley and McMillan and Barron and so forth. So that's where you want to go to Shawn's point. Let's move to the Raiders now. And the Raiders played 71 snaps on defense. And hopefully you listened to my LSU bias and you picked up Devin White as he played 100% of those 71 snaps and had 11 total tackles, 8 of which were solo, including a tackle for loss. Called it. If you didn't get him, hopefully, if no one else picked him up and didn't realize he was going to be the green dot and playing those snaps, go get him, folks. All right, that's some waiver advice for you. Jermaine Pratt played 92% of the snaps, but of that, 29% of those snaps that he played were on the D line / the edge. So he did have 8 tackles, but only 1 solo, 7 assists. And of course, Elandon Roberts left the game, which probably helped him somewhat in terms of playing a few more box snaps. Elandon Roberts played only 50% of the snaps before he left with the elbow injury. It's not supposed to be serious. He's supposed to day to day. Pratt, what's your feelings on Pratt, Shawn?
I think this is an outlier. I think with the injury to Landon Roberts, it changed their usage of him. And to your point, I think he did play a little more inside than originally intended. So I'm actually staying away from Pratt. It's Devin White or nobody out of these guys for me.
Agreed. And if you have Pratt, we're trying to trade him.
Mm-hmm.
Before,
yeah, especially after this game, after he just dropped 8 tackles now. Yeah.
Yeah. And particularly in Dynasty, if you can get a late round pick, go for it. Safety position, Chin and Polamalu. I always have trouble with that one. Both played 100% of the snaps. Jeremy Chin played 66% near the line. Isaiah Polamalu played 93% deep. So he did get that interception. He did have 7 tackles, 5 of which are solo. That is hard to repeat, folks. Caillou Blue Kelly, I had to go and check him out in particular since he had 9 tackles, 7 of which were solo, including 1 pass defense. He played 100% of the snaps, but 87% of those snaps were out wide. You're going to hear me say this on a few of the cornerbacks as we go through the rest of the show, but this is another potential Jalen Jones situation, who, by the way, when I talked about the Colts, I forgot to mention Jalen Jones didn't play a single snap for the Colts at cornerback this past week. So if you think about him repeating the top 12, it's not going to happen. But the thing with Jalen Jones, the thing with Caillou Blue Kelly, is if there's nobody better and he's just good enough to be on the field as that number 2 cornerback, he's playing 100% of the snaps for that team, he gets targeted, it creates tackle opportunities, an occasional interception opportunity, and that can be gold. So Caillou Blue Kelly is someone to keep an eye on just because he's going to be targeted like a fiend, and apparently he can tackle if he had 9 tackles. Shawn?
Yeah, I've actually got 2 waiver claims out for him right now.
All right, moving to the defensive line. That beast named Max Crosby played 100% of the snaps and had a sack and 2 quarterback hits. He only had 2 tackles, but he was on the field 100% of the snaps. That ankle surgery from last year appears to be all behind him, and he appears to be healthy. Coates played 45%. Tyree Wilson played 54% of the snaps. And I believe I mentioned him in the last show, the previous show, Shawn, that there was talk about him and his improved get off the line of scrimmage and so forth. And for the parts that I saw, he looked really good. He did have 3 tackles, 2 which were solo. He got a sack and 2 quarterback hits. He is someone in deeper leagues I'm willing to go after it. And by the way, we talked about like Tavius Robinson, certainly over Tavius Robinson.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually have Kuntz here also in some of these deeper leagues. He's the guy that's sitting on my bench right now, just waiting to see what kind of production here. And even though both these guys are rotating, both very productive here, this could be a rare situation if it continues that both guys can be productive enough to start in deeper leagues, more or less. So
And
that's go ahead.
particularly if he looks like in pass rushing downs, they've moved Tyree Wilson inside on some of those. So you have Kuntz and Wilson and Crosby on the field at the same time. And Kuntz, did have 3 tackles and he had a sack and a couple of quarterback hits. So don't want to dismiss him, just that he only played 45% of the snaps. So there could be a lot of productivity here. And Adam Butler played 86% of the snaps at defensive tackle, which is a whole lot. He had 3 unassisted tackles was his productivity, but we saw a lot out of him last year. Someone to monitor. And Thomas Booker, who they acquired from the Eagles, played 59% of the snaps, another defensive tackle to monitor. Now we're going to move to the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys. And boy, I tell you what, talk about put a monkey wrench in the first game of the year. The Dallas Cowboys certainly did that to us when Jack Sanborn wore the green dot throughout the preseason, offseason, etc. And lo and behold, the game starts and Kenneth Murray plays 100% of the snaps and is wearing the green dot. The Cowboys played 63 snaps, right at the league average, for last year at least. I haven't calculated this year yet. Sanborn only played 76% of the snaps. Per Mike Wohler, he played 85% of the first down, 88% of the second down, and only 31% of the snaps on third down. So clearly he's coming off on third down. He's a 2-down linebacker. Damone Clark played 67%. Those Jack Sanborn shares where we're talking about the Rose Booms and the Landmans and the Sanborns and so forth. Sanborn is in trouble here, Shawn.
Yeah, not what we were expecting at all here. That one really hurt, especially right out of the gate. Game one, we're all instantly wrong. Just some weird usage here. Even Damone Clark over Maris Luafau, I thought to be a bit puzzling after they talked up Luafau also. I really don't know what's going on here with the Cowboys right now. The only for sure guy to start is Kenneth Murray. I think this rotation eventually goes away and somebody eventually takes over more of a full time spot, but I can't tell you who and I can't tell you when.
It very well could be this rotation continues all the way until Overshown comes back from his
That's
injury.
worst case scenario, but yeah, it's possible too.
Yeah. So we're not playing Sanborn. We're not playing Clark. We're certainly not playing Lufau after playing only 6 snaps. So very surprising. And Murray did tie for the team leading tackles in 9. Now, Murray has tended to miss a lot of tackles as well. I haven't had a chance to see how many missed tackles he had.
I
But
think it was
9
two.
tackles. Oh, it was 2.
I
But
think
9
so.
tackles on 63 snaps. Solid production from an IDP perspective. All right. Moving to the edge position, of course, I know people were interested with Micah Parsons being traded. Sam Williams played the most snaps on the edge at 62%, with Nealon at 48%, Fowler at 43%, and Izuruku, the rookie, at 35%. Sam Williams had 5 tackles, 3 which were solo, had a tackle for loss, and got a quarterback for hit. In fact, a quarterback hit. In fact, all 4 of those men that I just named, each one of them had 1 quarterback hit. The problem is there was only 1 sack, and it came from Marshawn Nealon, who isn't necessarily a sack artist. So they only had 1 sack and 5 quarterback hits in this game against the Eagles. And so the loss of Micah Parsons is really going to hurt this pass rush. And I don't know if one of these guys can jump up. If there's one that I've got my eye on, it is Sam Williams, because he played the most snaps. And he had solid production 2 years ago, including from a sacks perspective, but of course was out with the ACL injury last year. So I want to see a little bit more before I'm willing to do much more with that. At the safety position, Donovan Wilson, 100%. Malik Hooker, 100%. Hooker played 77% of the snaps deep, but surprisingly tied for the team lead in tackles with 9, with 4 being solo and 5 being assisted. So And Donovan Wilson only played 40% of the snaps deep, the other 60% close to the line. But Donovan Wilson only had one assisted tackle. Tell me about Hooker and Wilson and how you feeling on either one of these guys. Are you playing either one, Shawn?
Personally, I don't play either one. Hooker has never been consistent enough for me, and Wilson has in the past. But you can't be up near the line 60% of the snaps and only get one assisted tackle. I don't want that either. I'm actually staying away from both these guys.
Right. Now, the cornerback spot, because we promised folks we talk about the slot cornerback situation. Um, Deron Bland and Kyer Elam, who the Cowboys acquired from the Bills, the former first round pick, who was a bust in Buffalo, those were the two starting outside cornerbacks. Trayvon Diggs was active, and he came in three wide situations, and he moved to the outside corner, and Bland moved into the slot. I expect that we'll see Diggs and Bland eventually starting on the outside, and when it goes three wide, Bland moves to the inside, and Elam comes in as that third cornerback. That could change when Siobhan Revel, the third round rookie who's still recovering from injury, when he comes back from injury, maybe he bumps Elam out, but that could take some time. But I think that's how the cornerbacks play out. Shawn, do you disagree with that?
No, I was actually really happy with the way they utilized Bland here. I think it's the first time he's really played in the slot in a few years, and that's where we want. That's where we want our guys to produce, and also uh, it looks very good for his production going forward. Bland's the guy I'm picking up.
All right. We talked earlier. Throughout this show, you've heard us talking about. Sometimes we've called it out directly, like Shawn did with Bland just a second ago. But based on utilization and how deep or close to the line of scrimmage or tackle productivity, you can tell who you should go and look for on your waiver wire and who you can pass on, folks. All right. So the Eagles played 61 snaps on defense. Zach Vaughn played 100%. Jihad Campbell played 92% of the snaps. Jeremiah Trotter played a big fat goose egg, not a zilch, nothing on defense. Neither did Smail Munden. So, as we talked about in our last show before week one, we talked about the fact that it looked like Campbell was taking over. We were worried about potential a little bit Trotter rotating in, but it was Bond and Campbell. The thing to worry about Campbell is he ended up playing 12 snaps on the edge. That is not good from an efficiency perspective. We saw that with the Jacksonville linebackers last year as an example. When they put Alua Khan and Lloyd, it really hurt their numbers out there last year. But he's still uber talented. And part of the things that we talked about in all season two that we're worried about the pass rush of the Eagles and would they need to put Campbell out there as a result. And the team only had one quarterback hit against the Cowboys and no sacks. And that quarterback hit came from Moro Ojomo, the defensive tackle. None from Smith, none from Hunt, none from Uche. So that's why I think they decided to put Campbell there, and he didn't get any quarterback hits either or sacks. What happened? They signed Zadarius Smith as well. So maybe that's a good sign for Campbell that they'll leave him as an off-ball linebacker and not put him on the edge and put Zadarius Smith out there. So I think that's how this is going to play out. Shawn, do you think that Trotter gets in there and impacts Campbell because they moved Campbell and they're going to move Campbell to the edge, or how are you feeling after week one?
Yeah, I think the Zadarius Smith signing was a sign that they're not fully confident in Smith and Jalex Hunt here moving forward, or at least not immediately. They're looking for some more production here. So 33-year-old Zadarius Smith to save the day. But to your point, I think it will push Campbell back into more linebacker snaps instead of putting him out there on the edge. So those 12 snaps, they could have been another 4 or 5 tackles.
Yep. And so, look, Nolan Smith played 85% of the snaps on the edge. He had 4 tackles, but only 1 solo. Jalex Hunt played 64% of the snaps, 3 tackles, only 1 solo. He did get a tackle for loss as part of that. Uche, 31% of the snaps. I had high hopes for Jalex Hunt this year. I have him on a dynasty league, and I've been stashing him since late last year. Granted, he came from a small college in Texas. I forget, Houston Baptist or Houston Christian or something along those lines. I apologize, I don't remember the exact name. I still have high hopes for him. I want to keep him in dynasty, but I think this could hurt him, and I think we see more Smith and the Smiths rushing as opposed to Jalix Hunt. We
Yeah,
should see.
these guys are on the lighter side. I think it's part of the problem here. They're more traditional off-ball linebackers instead of just big, uh, massive defensive ends. So, uh, getting a guy like Zadarius Smith, who kind of fits the mold in between, a little bigger and all, uh, I think will actually help Han out because he's seen better in that rotation where he wasn't just fully counted on. If he can, a little fresher, come in at certain situations, probably give him a little more production on the sack end, less on tackles.
Yeah. Now Blankenship played 100% of the snaps at safety. Um, Makuba played 84%. Sidney Brown played 23%. What do we know about this Vic Fangio defense? He plays a ton of two deep safety, which isn't good for productivity for safeties. Blankenship was deep 79% of the time. Makuba 71%. Brown 79%. The net of that is not very much production. Blankenship 3 tackles. Makuba 4 tackles. Brown 2 tackles. We're kind of staying away from these Eagles safeties, right, Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, the one positive thing we want to say about the Eagles defense is Cooper DeJean played 100% of the snaps, which was fantastic. So he played all 61 snaps. He only played 8 out wide, but the rest of it was either in the box or in the slot. So now he only had 5 tackles in 1 pass defense, but I think bigger stat days are going to be ahead for Cooper DeJean with that kind of utilization. So if someone panics and gets frustrated because he only had 5 tackles in a pass defense, go scoop him up. We love how that was how he was utilized. Moving to the Commanders, Wagner and Luvu played 100% of the snaps. The thing with Luvu, which really hurts his tackle efficiencies, is he played 34% on the line, and when he plays out on that outside, hurts his productivity. So if he gets you sacks, it's fantastic. He didn't in this game against the Giants. The Commanders played 68 snaps. I forgot to mention that. So he did get 7 tackles, but only 2 of those were solo, and then nothing really else. Wagner had 10 tackles. The old man's hanging in there. That's all we can say about him. Now, 5 were solo, 5 were assisted. So if you think about it, Roquan Smith, what we said, played 85 snaps and had 10 tackles. Wagner had the same in 68 snaps for perspective about Roquan Smith, just as a side note. Will Harris played 99% of the snaps. Quan Martin played 100% of the snaps at safety. Will Harris, if I remember correctly, had a forced fumble, but he played 63% of the snaps close to the line. So he's got that Jeremy Chin role from last year. The good news, though, too, is Quan Martin played 48% of the snaps close to the line, where he played many more snaps deep last year. Now, was that because of the Giants' offense and they weren't concerned? But if Quan Martin continues to play like that, now granted he only had 5 tackles and Will Harris only had 4 tackles because Will Harris is just a guy. That's one thing. So we're excited about utilization, but Will Harris has proven through the years he's just a guy. Okay. Quan Martin's kind of a stud athletically, and he had 5 tackles and a quarterback hit. That kind of utilization, I could be really happy with Quan Martin. Not putting him in my lineup yet, but boy, if he continues with this usage, something we like, right, Shawn?
Yeah, somebody who took Quan Martin in that argument between him and Will Harris there, I was actually pleased to see this utilization here. So it means both of them are going to get the opportunity to produce, which is what we like. If you got 2 safeties and the fact that Luvu goes out on the edge, somebody's going to get those other tackles in the middle, and it's coming these 2 guys' way.
Right. Now, at the slot cornerback position, Mike Sanders still was the man. He did play 15% at outside corner, but only 15%. Everything else, he played 91% of the snaps was either along the D-line or in the box or at slot. So his numbers weren't that great. He only had 2 tackles, but love the utilization. Don't give up on him after just one game. He was a top He was a top 12 cornerback last year based on how he was utilized very similarly. All right, moving to the Giants. Um, in the preseason, there was this concern about this rotation about Okereke and McFadden and Muasau, and they were alternating who's wearing the green dot. And we were both concerned, and you even called out a bold take that you thought Okereke would be gone from the Giants by the end of the year. And I agreed with that take that he could be traded at the trade deadline. Up until one major thing that changed everything, and that is Michael McFadden getting injured. So Michael McFadden played 11 snaps and then hurt his foot. They said the x-rays were negative. That came back pretty quick, which was good news until today here on Tuesday the 9th. And they came back and said he's going to have surgery and he's going to miss significant time. Don't have any more specifics in terms of what the injury is. Is it for the full season or part of the season? But with that, that kind of protects Okereke most likely with the Giants and also elevates Darius Muasau. Now, Muasau ended up playing 54% of the snaps. McFadden played 16. That doesn't add up anywhere close to 100 from a linebacker position. And Muasau on those 54% of snaps, that's 38 snaps out of the 70 that they played in total. So the Giants played 70, more than the average. Muasau had 2 tackles, 1 solo, 1 assist. Not very encouraging. What are you doing with these Giants, Shawn?
Oh man, I do wonder how much of Okereke's production was because of McFadden leaving the game with the injury. I really do think this was going to be way different, but this is the way it's played out. Okereke is safe to start right now, and he's the only one safe to start, unless we see something weird happen again later on. So the fact that he did pop off for 16 tackles, that's better than any game he had last year that I can recall. So the production's back. If these numbers keep happening, yeah, he's safe. We're back on the Okereke train for now.
Yeah, for now, because I don't think the Giants have any other choice, quite frankly. And when you
Right.
got Dabo fighting for his job in week 1, certainly didn't help them. So I think they're going to stick with him. And look, 16 tackles. He is the league leader in tackles after week 1. Now, 7 were solo and 9 were assisted, but still, he is the league leader. And that was only once again, the team played 70. He played 68 snaps. So it wasn't like they played 85 snaps or anything along those lines. So great production. We're not spending hardly anything on Muasau from a fab perspective. Maybe if you have a spot deep on your bench, you spend a couple of bucks, and if you get him, great, stash him and see what happens. But otherwise, we're not overspending on Muasau and assuming he's going to have McFadden production, folks. At the safety position, Newman and Holland both played 100% of the snaps. Newman 6 tackles, Holland 8. They both played roughly 50% of their snaps at free safety, which was interesting. I thought Holland might play a little bit more deep and Newman might be closer. In fact, during our start sit show, someone put to the moon with Newman or something along those lines, and we both agree with that. But a little bit disappointing on the usage here, Shawn.
Yeah, this one caught me by surprise here. I was expecting Newman to basically be the second linebacker on this team. And like you said, Holland, I was looking for 70-80% deep. That's not what we got. And again, I don't know if this is related to the McFadden injury or what's going on here. Hopefully this gets changed up a little bit this week. I would like to see Newman back in the box a lot more than just 50%.
Yeah. Now, 6 tackles and 8 tackles from our safeties is nothing to sneeze at for sure. But we're going to want to keep an eye on utilization, and we'll be here to do that for you. Drew Phillips was your nickel cornerback. He played 81% of his snaps in the slot, 19% in the box, and he played 1 out wide because the person he was guarding went out wide. So, but he only played 83% of snaps. I shouldn't say only, because 83 snaps for a slot cornerback is pretty good. Where I should have said only is he only had, unfortunately, 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo. I'd like to have seen a little bit more productivity with that 83% of the snaps. But Drew Phillips, someone I'm still comfortable with, someone I think is still a top 24 cornerback this year. Shawn is nodding his head in agreement. Paulson Adebo, or Debo, depending on how you want to pronounce it, he played 100% of the snaps and still had 7 tackles, 6 of which were solo and 1 pass defense. We were worried, from the Saints to the Giants, and would those tackles be at risk? But he's someone that's willing to stick his nose in there at cornerback and make those tackles. So if this continues, someone we can rely upon at a cornerback position as well. On the edge side of things, Burns played 67%, Carter 54%, Kayvon Thibodeau actually played the most at 74%. Burns had a phenomenal line with 6 tackles and 2 sacks as part of that. So fantastic job for Burns. Great start to the year. Abdul Carter, 3 tackles, half a sack, which he split with Kayvon Thibodeau. And Thibodeau had 2 tackles in that half a sack. And he got credit for the tackle for loss because he hit the quarterback first instead of Abdul Carter. So anyway, so that's just a quick education point. Sometimes when they split the sack, whoever hits the quarterback first gets the tackle for loss credit, and the other one does not. Chauncey Golston played 16% of the snaps, so he got in a little bit, but had a goose egg. We're not chasing Chauncey Golston. Shawn, are you pleasantly surprised at some of these numbers, particularly against this Commanders offense and Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good with the 3-man rotation there at edge. One of the few teams pulling that off. We talked about how the Dolphins had 4 guys playing 50% of the snaps and did nothing. So, these guys are getting pressure when you got a big guy like Dexter Lawrence there to help create havoc in the middle. You can get a little better production here on the end. So, fantastic usage. They're all startable, I would say. Mostly in deep leagues. Burns are starting no matter the depth. And the other 2 in deeper leagues, I think it's safe to start them both.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention on Carter, he actually got his hand on a punt as well and got credit for a partial punt block there. All right, moving to the NFC North now. The Detroit Lions only played 48 snaps. It is rare that you see a team play so few snaps on defense, but they only played 48 snaps on defense. Campbell and Ansel only played 100%. Campbell had 9 tackles on those 48 snaps, and he's playing the micro. He's wearing the green dot this year instead of Anzalone. He didn't have any big plays, but encouraging to see 9 tackles and 48 snaps. On the other hand, Anzalone played that role where Campbell was playing when the 2 of them played together before Anzalone got hurt last year, and Anzalone only had 4 tackles on those 48 snaps. So Anzalone is someone I think we're pushing down the board, folks. Shawn?
Yeah, I'm completely there with you. We had talked this offseason how Campbell was leapfrogging Anzalone, especially after the little contract dispute there with Anzalone. So good to see that type of production, man. That's insane for it's like 1 tackle every 5 plays. So that's great. If he can keep that up all year, it's to the moon with Campbell. So yeah, very excited for that.
Absolutely. Someone, if you can target him from a trade perspective, grab him now while the grabbing's good, because he'll cost a heck of a lot more in a couple more weeks when they start playing closer to 60-something snaps. Okay, Derek Barnes also played 90% of the snaps as a linebacker. He's the 3rd linebacker, but a number of those were kind of off the edge, kind of like this Jermaine Pratt discussion we had. So while he did have 6 tackles, including a tackle for loss, that was quite of a surprise. I don't know if that's going to continue at that kind of number. And with him playing on the edge, we're not chasing that, Shawn, right?
Not chasing it. He's had defensive line eligibility on sleeper for the last couple of years, and I want to say shout out to John Macri. I think he played 45% of his snaps on the defensive line. So, and that goes back to last year. He did something similar to where he played a lot of snaps on the end of the line there. So, maybe on sleeper you take a shot on him just because of the defensive line eligibility, but it's still going to have to be a deeper league because you're really not getting the sacks or you're just getting the tackles.
That's a great call out about the position eligibility on sleeper, which had slipped my mind. So, Shawn, that's why you're here, man. Great knowledge for our listeners and
I get
watchers.
one every now and then.
Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph played 100% of the snaps. Now, granted, it was only 48 snaps. Branch had 5 tackles and a tackle for loss. Kirby Joseph, 1 tackle. He played 71% of his snaps deep. Kirby Joseph is a person that both you and I predicted not to repeat in the top 24 this year because so much of his production was tied to interceptions. It is so hard to repeat on interceptions that we both had him down week one. A good example of that. He is someone that if you did pick him and didn't realize that tied to the interceptions and on big play scoring and all, he is someone I think we're getting rid of. Because you think about it, Trevon Diggs a couple of years ago had all those interceptions. What happened the next year? Deron Bland had all those interception return for touchdowns. What happened the next year? Interceptions just don't repeat, folks, like that. So if you can, see if you can package him maybe as part of a deal and get something else for Kirby Joseph. Meek Robertson played 11 snaps in the slot, as did Brian Branch. Kirby Joseph played 2. Terry and Arnold got hurt at cornerback. It's not, it looks like it's going to be a Meek Robertson primarily as the slot cornerback. But if Arnold doesn't come back, Meek goes outside. Branch ends up playing more in the slot. Is I think how this is going to play out at the defensive back at the slot position. On the edge side of things, Aiden Hutchinson, I referenced it very early in the show. Only one quarterback hit. Very disappointing start to the year. Hopefully we see a lot more from him. Marcus Davenport did play 69% of the snaps, though, and he did have 3 tackles. And we joked in our previous show about we don't want to rely on Marcus Davenport. But if he can stay healthy, there's some talent there, but we're just not betting on him staying healthy, sort of like we did with Landon Roberts. Moving to the Packers, who played 67 snaps, and oh my goodness, Edgerrin Cooper, as we expected, and who I labeled would finish second in linebacker scoring this year. That was my projection. Got off to a great start. He didn't have any big plays per se, but he had 12 tackles, 8 of which were solo, 4 were assisted, but he was all over the place. In fact, I saw something on X today that Micah Parsons drafted Edgerrin Cooper on his fantasy football team. I had no idea that Micah Parsons played fantasy football, and I had no idea that he was into IDP fantasy football. But when he was drafted, people were asking him, what do you know about Edgerrin Cooper? And he said, you saw that today, basically, or something along those lines. So thrill when someone like Micah Parsons is endorsing Edgerrin Cooper. And
or IDP in general.
Yeah, or IDP in general, exactly right. Quay Walker also had a fantastic game with 9 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass defense. He's playing for a contract because he hasn't been signed to an extension yet. The Packers actually even gave an extension to Christian Watson, who's on PUP list right now. They gave him a 1-year extension a little bit before we started recording here for $13 million next year. So they got him on the cheap relative to other wide receivers, but Quay Walker's still waiting. I think that's going to incent him, and this is off to a good start against that Lions team. McDuffie is the number 3 linebacker, played only 27% of the snaps, though. In the secondary, okay, we had Xavier McKinney playing 100% of the snaps. Evan Williams played 84%. Javon Bullard played 88%. And Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine played 100% of the snaps, primarily at outside cornerback. Let's start with those outside corners first. So Keyshawn Nixon, while he played 100% of the snaps and 93% of them were out wide, he still finished with 6 tackles, including 5 solo and a tackle for loss. So not bad. The tackle for loss was because of a Cooper play. Cooper broke through there, created havoc, and the guy spun away from him, and Nixon cleaned it up. So that's how Nixon got that one tackle for loss. It was because of Cooper. But Nixon also did not have any kickoff returns. Savion Williams had the 2 kickoff returns. I didn't see who was deep with Williams if Nixon was back there as well. But between Nixon and the rookie, if Nixon was back there, they kicked it to the rookie. And so, with Nixon being the number 1 cornerback, and Williams did a nice job with his returns, I don't think we're going to see Nixon returning things. So those people that rely on him, he's going to be playing outside. He's not getting those return yardage. Shawn, not feeling as good about Nixon this year.
Yeah, we talked about this in previous shows that we thought he was out of the slot for sure. Even with the uncertainties there with Nate Hobbs, Javon Bullard, and all that. So it always felt like he was the outside guy now, with the hope of some of those return yards. And if they're not there either, you have to bring him down. You can't hold him up to as high of a standard as we've had the last couple of years.
Yep. So McKinney played 66% of his snaps at free safety. Evan Williams played 77% of free safety. Now, I know he got an interception, which helped with his numbers, but that's not numbers we're looking for from McKinney and Williams. And speaking of McKinney, he did have 6 tackles, 3 solo, 3 assisted. But that's another one that interceptions really propped up his numbers last year, particularly in big play scoring systems. Don't expect that to repeat this year, even with that pass rush and so forth. Those are just hard to come by. Javon Bullard was the primary slot person. Javon Bullard once again, he played 88% of the snaps. Only 12% of those were at free safety. The others were closer to the line of scrimmage, including in the slot. So Nate Hobbs was inactive. Hobbs is, quote, practicing limited. The Packers have the Thursday night game against the Commanders. I think Bullard gets the same utilization again this week, but if Hobbs is active, something to be leery about. And I don't know if Bullard gets as much playing time as a result. So watch this. If you think about playing Bullard, watch the actives and inactives an hour and a half before the game. If Hobbs is active, I think I'm pulling Bullard out of my lineup and playing somebody safer. You agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, I just don't see it happening this week just because it is a short week. I think they're more likely to give Hobbs that extra time to rest up. I don't think you want to rush this. So yeah, after this week, going into week 3, hopefully we'll have a better understanding of what the rest of the season is going to look like. Because right now, this could turn into rotation at slot, could turn into a rotation at safety, if not rotating at both. Because they do seem to like having Bullard on the field. And for whatever reason, Evan Williams either can't stay healthy or they don't leave him on the field the entire time. So there's going to be a rotation somewhere. We're just not sure of who and where just yet.
Right.
It could be a situation where we can't start anybody.
Right. Now, on the start sit show, I may have been wrong because someone asked, won't Micah Parsons being on the field free up Rashawn Gary to be a stud? And I was like, that doesn't always play out like that. Well, maybe not for a full season, but at least for week 1, it certainly has. Rashawn Gary had 7 tackles, 3 solos, 4 assists. He had 1.5 sacks and 3 quarterback hits. So did Parsons being on the field free up that for Rashawn Gary? Is it that the Lions had 2 new starters and a new offensive coordinator, and Jared Goff looked like a totally different quarterback than what he's been the last couple of years under Ben Johnson? Maybe it's all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
But Gary had a fantastic game, and maybe Micah Parsons did contribute it. I want to see it more than once, but for sure. Now, Lucas Van Ness also had a good game as well. He had 4 tackles, half a sack as well. So now he was the number 3 linebacker. Well, excuse me, let me rephrase that. He's going to be the number 3 edge. I was trying to talk too fast, so let me slow down. He's going to be the number 3 edge with Parsons and Garrity being number 1 and 2. Parsons only played 45% this week. He will ramp that up with this, quote, back injury. Gary had 79%, Van Ness 54%. Kobe Wooden was a defensive tackle. I do want to talk about him. He played 52% of the snaps. He's the one that started, and we told everybody this. And if you paid attention to our last show, he's the one to watch, not Carl Brooks. And he did start, and he had 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. Now, that interior of the Lions offensive line, they've had a lot of change there. Plus, like Goff did not look like the same quarterback as well. So we're excited about these Packers numbers, but I think we're going to be a little bit cautious, Shawn, about paying too much in fab if any of these guys are free agents right now, like a Van Ness, like a Wooden. But we're keeping an eye, and maybe for down the road we're picking these guys up. Maybe.
I think you can pick up Gary, Rashawn Gary, Vanessa.
Yeah, I was referring to Wooden. Good point. Yes.
Yeah, if we're talking about defensive tackles, I'm still taking a shot on Devontae Wyatt. He's now the main defensive tackle there. Contract year. He got a sack this week. Again, it's
3% of the snaps. Yep.
it's a bit of an issue here with the Detroit Lions offensive line. So I think this line is going to be similar to the Titans, where to put it on, the matchups and everything, we could see these guys give up a lot of sacks. So whoever's playing against the Lions, I think, will be defensive edge rushers and all to target this year. But again, having Micah Parsons on the field creates opportunities for everybody else down that line. Defensive tackles, the guys on the inside, outside, everywhere down that line. So uh, one of the smartest moves this offseason or this season was to get Micah Parsons. So Devontae Wyatt, somebody to pick up. Uh, Probably more so in deeper leagues with DTs. So, but hey, if his production keeps up, yeah, definitely give him a look in your shallow leagues as well.
Okay. All right, moving to the Vikings, who played 67 snaps against the Bears. Blake Cashman, we love Cashman, except he's been injury prone, and he was
Shocked.
chasing Caleb Williams, and it looked like he got shot in the leg, and he had a hamstring injury. He's basically already been ruled out, and it looks like it's going to be multiple weeks. What was interesting is Eric Wilson is the person that moved into his role, not Ivan Pace. And so Eric Wilson was the full-time linebacker in Cashman's spot. Pace did play 70% of the snaps. Now, I think a lot of that had to do with Harrison Smith being out. But once again, that second linebacker spot, 70% is about the max that is typically played. And in this particular game where Pace is usually hyper efficient from a tackle perspective, he only had 5 tackles, 2 of which were solo. So a lot of people are going to be jumping on the Ivan Pace train, potentially waivers, but it's really Eric Wilson that they need to target. Now, granted, this will only be for a few weeks, so you don't want to overspin, but Eric Wilson is the person to go after. Shawn?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was a bit surprised that he took over. He's wearing the green dot. Um, I did see that, so that tells you what you really need to know as well. It's not Ivan Pace. We see what Wilson did last year when Quay Walker got hurt or Edgered Cooper got hurt, and just the rotations there in Green Bay. It was Wilson that took over that full time spot. I believe it was Quay Walker when he was out a few games, and he actually had some really productive weeks. I've got no problem going out and picking him up. In fact, I got several claims out for him right now. Definitely, they get one of the top linebackers to go after right now.
Agreed. Okay, so now we talked a lot about how the edge rushers might be used this year. And so Van Ginkel played 91% of the snaps. Turner only played 43%. That's Dallas Turner, the first rounder from last year. Jonathan Grenard played 93%. So Turner didn't get on the field a ton more than he did last year. Van Ginkel's utilization was interesting. He played 91% of the snaps. 80% was on the defensive line, which is 49 snaps. But he also played 5 in the box, and he played 7 in the slot. And because I saw him dropping back into coverage on several plays, that's not going to help Van Ginkel to become the number one edge player like he was last year, and with him playing those type of snaps. So, Shawn, are we worried about Van Ginkel? You think this is a one-off?
I
Or you
think
think
it's
to be
it,
more consistent usage and Fleury's trying to disguise stuff?
I think this has more to do with the Harrison Smith injury. And we talked about that. Some of these guys moving, and Ginkel's one of the guys we talked about maybe playing inside, traditional linebacker, dropping into safety, whatever, or slot, I guess. Uh, he can do those things, and those are great from an NFL perspective. It is not good for fantasy. So, for as long as Harrison Smith is out, I'll say that we'll probably see more of this until we get back to those 3 safety sets: Harrison Smith, Theo Jackson, and Josh Metellus. So, just be aware of that. He can still get some interceptions and sacks and all that fun stuff, but you can't count on that every week. It is going to hurt his production. So just be aware of it, but don't panic just yet.
Yeah. Now, Dallas Turner, we were curious. He played 29 snaps on that 43%. We were wondering if he would play some of this off-ball linebacker and play in the box some. He played 27 of his snaps on the defensive line and only 2 in the box. So Van Ginkel is the one that they are moving around. And as they move him around, Turner kind of is filling some of that edge role a little bit. Okay, now moving to the safety spot. As we talked about, Harrison Smith was inactive. He got this illness thing. He did get a limited practice in, so we'll have to continue to watch the injury reports and see. But Medalist played 100% of the snaps. Theo Jackson played 100% of the snaps, as we expected both of them to do. Jay Ward actually played 37% of the snaps as well. Let's talk about alignment, though. Medalist, who played a lot more closer to the box, actually played 70% of his snaps deep. Theo Jackson played 82% of the snaps deep. That is not good for either one's productivity. Now, Medalist did end up with 6 tackles, four of which were solo. Theo Jackson only had 4, 3 of which were solo. If I have Medalist, I am looking for someone else to start here in week 2, particularly if Harrison Smith is not playing. Shawn?
Yeah, I would be okay with that as well. It may take a week or two until this settles down and he gets back into his traditional star role there in that safety slot position. So yeah, if you have an option, go for it. If not, even with that deep alignment, he was still somewhat productive. So if there's nobody else for you to pick up, and surely there is with the amount of safeties and all in the league. So if you got to play him, play him. But if you do have a better option, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and replace him for the next week, maybe 2, until we get a better idea of what's happening out here.
Right. Now, Byron Murphy, I expected him to be the slot in when they went 3 wide with Isaiah Rodgers and Jeff Okuda on the outside. Well, not you can't trust that when it comes to Brian Flores. So that's not what happened. Murphy played 10 snaps in the slot, so he played the most. Van Ginkel played the second most with 7. And then Medalist played 6, Isaiah Rodgers played 6, Theo Jackson played 3, and Jay Ward played 3. The net of that is there's no obvious nickel cornerback at this point in time. Once again, Harrison Smith could be having quite an impact on this. So we'll see how this plays out. But for now, Byron Murphy, who got a decent amount of snaps in the slot last year, but also had a lot of interceptions, which helped his numbers. Byron Murphy is someone I am hesitant to play right now. Okay. With that, let's now move on to the Bears, who played 56 snaps against the Vikings last night. TJ Edwards was inactive. And if you followed me on Twitter, and I encourage y'all to do it, we do it on every show, same with Shawn, you would have seen me tweet out that, because I'd seen other people tweet out that they expected Hippolyte to play or Hippolyte and Sewell to rotate. And I said, based on the preseason, how it was used, it certainly looked like it was going to be Noah Sewell. And certainly that's how it played out. Sewell played 98% of the snaps. Edmonds played 100 at the linebacker position. But Sewell led the team in tackles with 9, including 7 of which were solo. So follow me on X, because every once in a while I'll be tweeting out some of these last-minute pieces of information that you're going to want to know. I don't go crazy on Twitter, so I'm not going to bombard you with tweets. But every once in a while, particularly on some of these Sunday night games or Thursday night games, I'll give you some nuggets to watch out for, okay? So great news on Sewell. Edwards did not play at all this past week, or did not practice at all this past week. So I would expect that we'd have another week at least of Sewell and someone I'm comfortable playing, Shawn, based on these numbers and results.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that was on 56 snaps, by the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. 56 snaps, 9 tackles. That's great. Yeah, if Edwards continues to miss a game or two, Sewell for sure you can pick up and start. I imagine once Edwards does come back, Sewell will drop into that old Jack Sanborn role where it's like 40% of the snaps or something, and he'll go back to irrelevancy basically. But while Edwards is gone, Sewell's the man to pick up.
Right. And now Hippolyte only played 8 snaps to put perspective. Brisker and Byard both played 100% of the snaps at 56. Brisker played 48% of the snaps deep. So that meant basically the 52% closer to the line. Kevin Byard was 66% deep. Now, both ended up with 5 tackles, but we sure like Brisker's utilization more than Byard. In this Dennis Allen defensive system, different than Eberflus's, this bodes well for Brisker. I'm a little bit nervous about Byard, Shawn.
Yeah, Byron's traditionally been a free safety, a guy that stayed back deep. He was just always played behind linebacker groups that were awful, so he always ended up with a bunch of tackles too. So still solid production, but yeah, Brisker's the one you want here based on the utilization and what we've seen in the past. He's been a high tackle guy if he could just stay healthy. So for now, yeah, Brisker's the guy.
Now, Kyler Gordon was inactive, and I predicted Gordon to be my number one cornerback this year. This is not going to help when he misses the first game of the year, from an injury perspective. Maybe on a points per game, he'll be number one, but oh, that hurt. Nick McLeod played in his stead, and Nick McLeod played 82% of the snaps. And he had zilcho, nada, nothing, not a single freaking stat. So I'm not expecting that to translate to Kyler Gordon if you're worried about that, but just as an FYI. Montez Sweat, 77% of the snaps. Deo Odeyingbo, 82% of the snaps. Odeyingbo had a sack and two quarterback hits. Montez Sweat and Odeyingbo both had two tackles. On the defensive tackle side of things, Grady Jarrett played 82% of the snaps, which I was really surprised that he played that much. Only three tackles, only one solo. That's probably what we expect from Grady Jarrett these days. We're not expecting sack numbers anymore from him. But Gervin Dexter only played 63% of the snaps. But I think he's poised for a big year. Three tackles, and not just because he got a sack and all, but he was starting to break out last year. I think this is a potential breakout year for him.
I'm right there with you. Great call.
Moving to the NFC South, and folks, we know this is now over 2 hours long. We're going to keep on going. We're going to hit these last two divisions and give you the details. And once again, if you're joining, you could skip around. We'll have the timestamps for each division so you can try and find specific teams. All righty. Saints played 66 snaps. Demario Davis played 100%. Pete Werner played 91%. They both finished with 9 tackles. Davis had 2 tackles for loss. Pete Werner got a sack. Now, one of the things I talked about is I was high on Pete Werner this year, and why was that? Was because of the difference between the Staley more zone scheme for the linebackers versus the Dennis Allen man scheme for linebackers, and that bodes much better for Pete Werner and his style of play. Got off to a great start, so hopefully, when you heard that from me, you took advantage of that and tried to grab Pete Werner where you could. Justin Reed and Julian Blackman played 100% of the snaps at safety. 6 tackles and 7 tackles respectively. The big news on Blackman, though, is he has a bicep, I forget if it was biceps or triceps injury. Looks like he'll need surgery. Giannis Sanker, the rookie, is the person I would currently pick up in Blackman's stead. Now, Blackman did play 64% of the snaps deep, and you have a rookie there. But now, and Justin Reed only played 50% of the snaps deep. My thinking is, and this could be wrong, but if Blackman is out and if they don't sign a free agent like Justin Simmons, I haven't seen that rumored, but that's just Ricky speculating here. If that doesn't happen, I could see Reed going to that deep safety role and Sanker, the rookie, playing more in that box role, making Sanker, it might be Sanker, much more of a desired IDP safety. And Sanker was known for being a good tackler in college as part of the reason the Saints drafted him and Stutzman for the future. So, Shawn, what do you think about that hypothesis? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, it could very easily happen. We've seen Justin Reed play the deep role. We've seen him play the box role, and frankly, he's good at both from an NFL perspective. So probably just depends on where they feel more comfortable with Sanker. I assume it's Sanker as well because I believe Howden is injured as well right now or banged up with something.
Yes,
They
Howden
just
is banged up.
they just about have to sign somebody else if at least for depth
Yeah.
at this point. So curious to see how this plays out. Justin Reed was a guy, another safety I was getting really late. Everybody was overlooking. If he does drop deep more and Sanker plays up in the box more, then it's going to hurt some of that production. Uh, I would still expect 80 tackles or so out of Reed, regardless of where he lines up. So I think he'll do enough that this Saints defense is going to be on the field enough, I think, to still produce no matter where Reed is at. So, uh, but yeah, I think you're right. I could see Reed dropping deep here.
Now, Alontae Taylor only played 55% of the snaps. And thank goodness, very late in the game, he got a sack that gave the Saints a chance to try and tie it. Otherwise, it would have been very disappointing. And when on that sack, he looked like he was healthy. So I think this might have been more about the Cardinals' utilization. And once again, when we talk about looking for teams that play a lot of three wide, which the Cardinals don't necessarily do,
Right.
play a lot of. And so that's why Taylor wasn't on the field as much. And with that 55%, only two tackles, very disappointing overall. Ugo Amadi didn't play a single snap as a side note. Carl
Uh,
Granderson played.
let me interrupt you real quick. The thing with Ugo Amadi, he's also a former safety. Uh, is he somebody we could see back there some as well?
Oh, that's an interesting point. Maybe as a backup, I don't think I see him starting. I didn't see him play any safety during the preseason. It was mostly that slot cornerback type of role.
Yeah, I think
But,
back
but
with the Seahawks, I think he was more of a safety, and then switched to more corner slot. Once he went to, I believe, once he switched over to the Saints. So it's just
but that is
another thing
that
that
is
could
good.
happen.
That is a very good point, and something we'll have to watch. He very well could end up moving into that starting safety role instead of the rookie. So that's a great call out, Shawn. So the point is, don't overspend on Sanker in your fab with your fab dollars.
Right.
Okay. There was already enough questions based on what we talked about in speculation, and then throwing the Mahdi part into it as well.
We're giving everybody headaches.
Yep. Granderson 86%, Cam Jordan 74%. Um, if I could turn back time, you know that song? I
I've
think
heard of
Cam
it.
Jordan turned the time back, having 1.5 sacks and 3 tackles and playing that many snaps. And apparently, he really worked as he does every offseason to stay in great shape and all. He is on the older side. Chase Young was inactive. I don't think that Cam Jordan will play that many snaps. I don't think at his age, I'd be surprised if he could. Chase Young would take some of his snaps, take some of Granderson's, but Granderson had a fantastic game with 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, a couple of pass defenses as well. Great game for Granderson. Um, and all, but just know that some of their snaps might come down a little bit, which could impact their stats. Still love Granderson this year. I'm still high on Chase Young as well. But Cam Jordan, maybe they actually, because of this, move him a little bit more inside, not as much on the edge from a rushing perspective. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But don't go over chasing Cam Jordan based on these results. But something to keep an eye on here. And he's got defensive tackle eligibility on the MFL. Shawn, that's where you were about to go?
That's where I was going, and we called that out months ago. As soon as we seen it change on MFL, we tried to bring that to everybody's attention way back in our defensive tackle show for the repeat rates. So it's good to see that pay off because if you got him on MFL, that was huge points for a defensive tackle production wise. So uh, you might chase it from that perspective, but again, it's dependent on Chase Young's availability going forward as well.
All right. So then let's move to the Falcons now. Um, Caden Ellis, they played 58 snaps. Caden Ellis played 100%. Devon Diablo played 98%, which is fantastic for Diablo. He had 6 tackles and half a sack as part of that, and he got a pass defense as well. So this is great news for Diablo and his utilization. Someone I got to admit, he was sitting on a waiver wire in one of my leagues, and I'm like, nah, I just don't trust him. He struggles so much, but Falcons used him full time. So great if y'all picked him up, and if he's out there, someone to target. Ellis only had 5 tackles in the pass defense, but late in that game, I saw them blitzing him quite a bit. Now he didn't get to the quarterback, but he was trying to get after Baker late in that game. So I was very encouraged to see how much they blitzed Caden Ellis, which would be good for some of these other stats that we need for IDP. Jesse Bates and Xavier Watts had played 100% of the snaps at safety. They both had 6 tackles. Watts also had a couple of pass defense. Watts seemed to be all over the place. Now, according to PFF, he only played 45% of the snaps deep, and Jesse Bates only played 35% of the snaps deep. Something didn't that in the there's one other team we haven't got to yet that I'll mention there. Something didn't feel right with those numbers, and it felt low to have with those two. So I want to be careful with that takeaway. But anyway, Watts and Bates are two that I love based on what I saw, and I actually started Watts in one of my leagues in the Kings Classic League. I felt very comfortable putting him in, and he came through for me with the 6 tackles and 2 pass defenses. Billy Bowman played 81% of the snaps. As you may recall, he's got safety designation in both leagues, but he's been playing the slot cornerback role, and he only played 2% of his snaps wide or deep. 81% of the snaps were close to the line, which is great, but unfortunately, he's a safety designation playing corner as opposed to the other way around. And at 81% of the snaps, we don't want to go there at the safety position, even though he was fairly productive. But something we'll continue to keep an eye on there. On
I
the edge
will,
side,
I will say on ESPN, Billy Bowman is designated as a cornerback, much like Jalen Petrie is designated as a cornerback. So if you play on ESPN, they have moved those guys to a position where they're actually startable. So if I have a safety, basically, who can blitz and stuff as my corner, then yes, now he has very good value for me. So just another thing to look out for. Know your platform. Pay attention to designations.
great call out, Shawn. And then on the edge, the 2 rookies, neither one started. James Pierce played 40% of the snaps. Jalen Walker played 45% of the snaps. I did check on Jalen Walker to see if he played any box snaps. Of the 26 he played 1 box snap. The other 25 were on the edge. So at least at this point in time, no sign of him moving to the edge. And by the way, Divine Diablo missed 1 snap, and Walker played 1 snap. Okay.
There you go.
So that's the Falcons, folks, and we're not chasing Leonard Floyd or Ebiketie, even though Ebiketie had 5 tackles in his only 43% of the snaps. Moving to the Buccaneers, Levante David played 100% of the 76 snaps that the Bucs played. Servacia Dennis, and we told y'all, go get him. He played 95% of the snaps and had 10 tackles. 7 of which were solo, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass defense. We covered on the show. Hopefully you listen to us, but if not, he's someone that you can play at linebacker. Go get him. Levante David, of his 9 tackles, only 3 were solo. Okay, for perspective versus the 10 and the 7 that Servacia had. We did love what we saw from Tyke Smith. He played 97% of the snaps, led the team in tackles with 11. Now remember, they played 76 snaps. So those numbers are going to be inflated for all these guys because of the higher than normal average that they played. He had 7 solo, 4 assists, and a pass defense, and he only played 31% deep. Now he did end up playing 9% wide, so 40% of the snaps were at outside cornerback or free safety, but 60% were close to the line. So we liked that a heck of a lot. Antoine Winfield, we didn't like as much because he played 74% of the snaps deep. We tend to love us some Antoine Winfield, but that feels like the Minkah Fitzpatrick treatment that we were seeing when he played with the Steelers last year, which isn't good for productivity. Antoine Winfield only had four tackles, 1 of which was solo, and 1 pass defense. So a little bit nervous about Winfield right now, Shawn.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This could be, what keeps him healthy for a whole season to not have him up in the box taking all those hits as often. So, yeah, definitely if you got Winfield, maybe try to trade him off based on name value for now. Make everybody think you're just, that they're buying the dip, basically. You're selling low or whatever. But I think this is going to be the way it's going to go for the foreseeable future. I do think his production will drop a lot here.
Yeah. Jacob Parrish is their nickel cornerback. So Tyke did not play in that nickel role. Well, I take it back. He played 15 snaps in the slot. But in terms of the pure slot role, Jacob Parrish played 46 snaps there. 84% of the snaps he played were in the slot. So that is your slot cornerback. And once again, if you're playing teams with 11 personnel, Jacob Parrish, he had 5 tackles. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he's willing to stick his nose in there, and he also had a tackle for loss as part of that. So we like us some Jacob Parrish. On the edge, Yaya Diaby, 74%. Hassan Reddick, 79%. Yaya Diaby, once again, gets 2 quarterback hits, but didn't translate them into sacks. He's getting so close. He's going to break out here at some point this year, folks. You're going to be glad you have him on your team. Do not give up on him. Reddick did end up getting a sack for us out of the Bucks. All righty. We're going to move to the Panthers here, who played 66 snaps against the Jags. And two things that say the Panthers defense does not look any better than they did last year, but the Jaguars offense does not look any better either. Really worried about Trevor Lawrence based on what I
Yep.
saw, no matter what people were saying out there. Okay, Roseboom played 100% of those 66 snaps as we expected, and he had a typical Roseboom line: 8 tackles, 7 solo, 1 assisted. That's Christian Roseboom for you, folks. Trevin Wallace played 86% of the snaps. He only had 5 tackles in those 57 snaps. So 86% is a little bit of improvement versus last year, but still, he's a little bit risky to be playing, Shawn. I don't know how great I feel about playing Wallace right now.
Yeah, coming into the league last year as a rookie, he was known as being raw. He was going to need some work or some refinements, and it's still work in progress. In deep leagues, you might take the shot on him to starting, but we're talking deep leagues just based on how many snaps he's getting. Eventually, people are going to run into him. So, uh, yeah, outside of that, you don't need to start him.
So Trevin Morig played 100% of the snaps, and he got 11 tackles. And the great news is that he played 89% of his snaps close to the line. Fantastic news for Morig. Go get Morig if you can get him from somebody. He is someone to target. Nick
Yep.
Scott played 100% of the snaps. He played 94% of those deep. And I saw him have a nice whiff on Travis Etienne's long run. Just completely missed him and let him go deep. Let him run a long ways, let me rephrase that. Lathan Ransom ended up playing 9 snaps. All of them were deep. But once again, Nick Scott did play 100% of the snaps. But Ransom played 9 snaps. Demina Richardson didn't play any snaps at safety. Very disappointing. I think you can give up on Demina Richardson if you're holding out hope, folks. So it looks like Ransom would be the one to go in for Scott once Scott does get benched. I didn't say
Win.
if.
Yeah,
I said
it's
when.
win. I'm with you.
Chow Smith Wade is their nickel cornerback. Um, he played 85% of his snaps near the line of scrimmage. He played 71% of the total snaps, but he only had one single tackle. So while he's playing that role, someone we're not chasing.
I did do a little research. It is Shaw.
It's
Wade's name.
Shaw. Okay.
Shaw
Thank
Wade's.
you. And you
Yeah.
can remind me next week when I pronounce it incorrectly. Now, back to that Panthers defense and how bad it is against Jacksonville, which let's just say they don't have a top 5 offensive line, okay? They had 0 sacks and only 1 quarterback hit from the entire team. That was by DJ Wanham. But DJ Wanham had no tackles. Patrick Jones had 1 tackle. Nick Skirton had 1 tackle. Princely Emanumalian had 1 tackle. That's it. That was the entire production from their 4 edges. So maybe you keep him Skirton and Emanumalian on dynasty taxi squads or something along those lines. But this Carolina Panthers team is in trouble. Now, it was rumored that they went after Micah Parsons, one of the teams. But if I'm Mike, I'm like, I ain't going there. I want to go to the Packers. All right, let's go to our last division. Let's go to the NFC West. And the 49ers played only 52 snaps against the Seahawks. The good news, D. Winters played 100% of the snaps. He's someone you can rely on and put in your lineups on a regular basis. He only had 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, but once again, that was only on 52 snaps versus a typical 63. Fred Warner only played 49. He was briefly injured, came back in the game. He had 8 tackles on those 49 snaps, off to a good start from a tackle efficiency from that regard. Luke Gifford was the number 3 linebacker, as we've been talking about. Nick Martin was inactive. So we are not worried about Nick Martin at all. We stashed him for Dynasty and not much else, and you can drop him. The other thing, similar to the Cowboys playing games with us, the 49ers played games with us in that they had Jair Brown as the starting safety next to Jason Pinnock on their unofficial depth chart. And those suckers did not play Jair Brown but 2 snaps, and it wasn't at the start. Jason Pinnock and Marquise Siegel, the rookie Siegel, played 52 snaps. So they both played 100%. Siegel had 6 tackles. Pinnock had 4. Siegel also got a fumble recovery. This is the other one that I'm a little bit concerned about the PFF numbers, and I'm going to be looking for refreshes. They said Pinnock only played 29% deep. Marquise Siegel only played 21%. Something's just not right there, folks. So, but right now, if you're chasing either of these two, based on what I saw, I love the way Siegel was playing around the field and was playing and running around the field, whereas Pinnock has been more of a deep safety in the past. So, is Siegel who you're going after as well, Shawn, from a waivers perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I put a couple claims in on him already in leagues I didn't already have him in. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it looked like he was the box guy, and Pennick's the free safety. He's the deep guy. That's how it looked to be, and that's traditionally where Pinnock has played deep. So, just based on the tackles and everything, and just what some of the running around I seen, looked like Siegel is your box guy. You're up near the line, so I'm definitely going after him because nobody else knows about him right now.
Yeah. Now, Upton Stout is the nickel cornerback for San Francisco, but he only played 56% of snaps of the very low 52 snaps. So he only had 1 tackle and 1 pass defense. I think there's brighter days ahead for him. But right
Mm.
now, and Seattle does not play a lot of 3 wide. It's JSN. You got some Cooper Cup. You got a little bit Torrey Hart mixed in, but they like to use a lot of tight ends. That's even Sobear was playing, Arroyo was playing. And of course, oh my gosh, the starter, AJ Borner, drew a blank. So anyway, the, there'll be better days ahead for Upton Stout. Don't give up on him from a nickel perspective. Nick Bosa played 88% of the snaps. Love it when these star edge players play so many snaps like Garrett and Watt and Crosby and so forth. He had 6 tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for loss. Also forced a fumble, got a fumble recovery. Very productive. The ends across from him, not so much. Michael Williams had 1 assisted tackle. Yetur Gross Matos had 1 quarterback hit. Bryce Huff had a goose egg from a stats perspective. And, Williams played 39 snaps, Gross Matos 17, Huff played 26. That's pretty poor. So outside of Bosa, we're not chasing any of these other guys. Okay. Moving to the Seahawks, who played 76 snaps, as you would expect, since San Francisco hardly played any when they played against each other. Okay. Ernest Jones played 76, all 76 snaps, played 100%, had 8 tackles, including a tackle for loss and a couple of pass defenses. Would like to have seen a couple more tackles with those kind of stats, particularly how much Christian McCaffrey touched the ball, but we'll live with the 8 tackles and the 2 pass defenses. Tyrese Knight played 74% of the snaps. What was interesting is Drake Thomas came in and played 20% of the snaps. Does that mean that Tyrese Knight, if he was fully healthy, would be playing 94% of the snaps? I don't think that's the case. So I think Thomas might have been playing a little bit more of what Iman Wari was going to play, but Iman Wari only played 4 snaps, left the game early. Report came out today that apparently it's a high ankle sprain that's not confirmed. It was not from the coaches. At least I didn't hear from the coaches. So Iman Wari is going to be out for a while. Not picking up Drake Thomas, and hard to play Tyrese Knight with 74% of the snaps, Shawn.
Yeah, that 74% of the snaps is pretty on par with what was going on last year. I know a lot of people were hoping he was going to get a full time role this year. I've stayed away from him, and I think we've talked about how neither one of us were really on the Tyrese Knight train there. And this pretty much backs it up. I'm sure he was productive, 7 tackles, but can he do that every week? I doubt it. It's, Drake Thomas, we're not picking up.
Right. Now, at the safety position, Julian Love and Kobe Bryant played 100% of the snaps, and that was 76 snaps. So Julian Love had 10 tackles, and he got a sack. And of course, a tackle for loss quarterback hit that goes with that. Kobe Bryant had 8 tackles. What's interesting, Julian Love still played 62% of the snaps deep. Kobe Bryant played 82 snaps deep. So granted, it was on 76 snaps, but both of them, I continue to be amazed. I'd say shocked at how productive they've continued to be, even playing with that many snaps. talk about Julian Love in our top 24 show and the stat you shared with everybody, Shawn.
Yeah, he's been one of the two safeties that were in the top, not just top 24, but top 12 the last 3 years straight. And the other one was Derwin James. Julian Love finished higher than Derwin James all 3 years. So he's off to a fantastic start, right where he should be. The fact that Kobe Bryant's right there with him is, like I say, it's impressive considering how deep they play or how often they're playing deep. And this could be because there's more of a one full time linebacker gig. It's hard to say, but these guys are super productive.
Yep. So I'm still a little bit nervous about Kobe Bryant. I'm all in on Julian Love. Kobe Bryant did get a decent amount of interceptions last year, so I'm a little bit nervous on him as a result. Shawn?
He has cornerback eligibility on Yahoo. Kobe Bryant does.
Which is beautiful. So if you're in Yahoo, go grab him as a cornerback. That's just phenomenal.
As does Marcus Siegel going back to the 49ers.
Wow,
So
that's great.
two little cheat codes there if you need them.
That is great information, Shawn. Devin Witherspoon was the primary slot cornerback. He played 40 snaps out of the slot of the 76 in total. He only played 10 out wide, and then he played another 24 in the box and one along the defensive line. So Devin Witherspoon, we were worried about what would Iman Warri's um, due to Witherspoon's utilization. Of course, Iman Warri got hurt, so but as of now, no impact, particularly with Iman Warri hurt, and so Witherspoon is still good to play, but it's something we'll monitor as Iman Warri comes back from that high ankle sprain. On the Rams side of things, Nate Landman played 62 snaps, so he played 98%. He played all but one snap, tied for the team lead in tackles with 10. He had a great forced fumble, the peanut punch, as they call it, which kind of helped ice the game for the Rams against the Texans. And 10 tackles, that's what we expected from him. And he also got a quarterback hit as part of that. So if you drafted Landman, you took advantage where he was going as a linebacker 4, and we said draft him earlier. Hopefully you're taking advantage of that. Omar Spates only played 71% of the snaps as the number 2 linebacker. That's not enough snaps for us to use him, and he only had 4 tackles. Troy Reeder and Sean Dulac, the 2 backup linebackers, only played special teams, no snaps on defense. Cam Curl and Quentin Lake played 100% of the snaps, going now to the secondary, where Cam Kinchins played 90%. Let's talk about utilization. Cam Kinchins played 86% deep, only had 4 tackles as a result. Cam Curl played 60% deep, 40% close to the box, but it was the Cam Curl that we loved back when he played for the Washington football team, I believe it was at the time. Maybe it was the Redskins. I can't even remember. It was that long ago. But he had 10 tackles, 8 of which were solo. So not sure if maybe there's some health issues we didn't know about that I didn't talk about. We don't know if this is one game outlier because, once again, the Rams only played 63 snaps, which is right on average. But it's something to watch for Cam Curl for as we move forward. I'm not sold yet based on this one game, but something we're going to keep an eye on. Quentin Lake, who both Shawn and I were out on this year, he was the slot cornerback. 48 of his snaps were in the slot, 7 in the box, 4 in the defensive line. He basically only played forward, free safety. The rest was close to the line. And with all that, he only had 2 tackles, 1 solo, 1 assisted. We've been out on Quentin Lake, and very disappointing stats, and that has continued. The Rams seem to love him, but we don't love him for IDP, right, Shawn?
Yeah, I guess it's just the. I can't say it's just the matchup here. The Texans, the running game had Joe Mixon been healthy and all this, maybe he'd have got more tackles. But look, going back to last year, how we just kind of fell off. It's not good, and it's kind of sticking with that trend. So yeah, look elsewhere for cornerback help or for a
Exactly.
slot player, I guess.
And Byron Young, who we talked about on one of our shows as a potential breakout and all, had a fantastic first game. And so if he happens to be out there because everybody grabbed Verse and ignored Young, go grab him. Right, Shawn?
Absolutely, it was insane how low Byron Young was going, and when you look at him and Verse, the stats were very similar. and Young was very consistent from his first year to his second year. So yeah, this is the breakout starting right now. What we've talked about. Big year coming this year. Everybody's focused on Verse. So if you were lucky enough to pick him up late, great. If not, go get him now because there's more coming.
All right. And then let's move on to the Cardinals, who played 75 snaps against the Saints, which I can't comprehend that when the Saints only scored like 13 points. Um, but they dink and dunk, trying to get up the field. Um,
Uniforms look good though.
I wasn't a fan of the uniforms, to be honest with
No,
you. But Mac Wilson played 100% of the snaps, and he had a Kaiser White type line for the Arizona Cardinals like last year. And that was 8 tackles, 4 which were solo. He did get a tackle for loss, and he got a pass defense. That was a Kaiser White line, which Kaiser White ended up as like a low end 2. And that's what we kind of talked about it for Mac Wilson. And that's where he is from a start perspective. Now, Akeem Davis Gaither, people can look at the box score and say, wow, he had 7 tackles in a pass defense. Holy cow, I should go after him. But we're not doing that because he only played 37% of snaps, which translated 28 on a high number of snaps, okay? So we're not chasing on 28 snaps, folks, the 7 tackles. That efficiency won't last. Shawn is nodding his head that he's in agreement that we're not chasing that.
yeah, insane production.
Yeah. But not sustainable. Buda
Not
Baker
sustainable.
and Jalen Thompson both played 100% of the snaps. Buda Baker played 44% deep, which means he was 56% close to the line. Jalen Thompson only played 37% deep, which means he was 63% close to the line. Like both of those numbers, Buda had 10 tackles, Jalen Thompson had 8. So if Jalen Thompson is out there with these kind of numbers close to the line, someone to go after. When he's been used in this way, he has put up good tackle numbers. The problem is he's bounced around between box and deep, box and deep. This is 1 week. I'm willing to roster him, but be careful. We're going to monitor how he does. Garrett Williams was the primary slot corner for the Cardinals. He did play 64% close to the line, but he did start on the outside, and he started outside along with Max Melton. When they went to 3 wide, he moved to the inside, and Will Johnson, the rookie, came and played that other outside cornerback slot. So the good news, that's allowing Garrett Williams to be on the field for 100% of the snaps and could lead to some good slot productivity from a cornerback perspective. On the defensive line, Josh Sweat, we had a question during our start sit. So should they play Josh Sweat? And I was against it, even though it was against my Saints, and I was concerned about the offensive line. And that was good guidance, as he only had 1 tackle and 1 quarterback hit on 63% of the snaps. Baron Browning had the only sack. The Cardinals only had 1 sack and 2 quarterback hits against the Saints, which is really shocking and disappointing. Baron Browning got that 1 sack that they had. So really nervous about the Cardinals' pass rush here. I had picked him up to play against the Saints in a guillotine league. From a streaming perspective, even though I think it's the Panthers they're playing, I'm not feeling as good based on these sack numbers. The last thing I want to mention about the Cardinals is Zaven Collins, because he did play some off-ball linebacker during the preseason, during training camp, I should say. And I wanted to see if what he did. Of the 37 snaps he played, he only played 3 in the box. He did play 6 in the slot, but he played 28 on the D line. So not enough there to impact Mac Wilson in any way. If anything, he played a few snaps next to him instead of Davis Gaither. So that's it. That is all 32 teams. And we know that was a lot of information. We're going to figure out how to shorten this a lot more for next week, folks. But if you need that information coming out of week 1, once again, you can skip around listening and jump around based on the timestamps we're going to give for each of the divisions, and within the divisions, the different teams. All right, so don't forget, we have our Start Sit show this coming Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central. Join Shawn and I, and hopefully Michael Sicoli will be joining us while he's there. If you love this show or liked it even, give it a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Please put your comments, questions, etc., suggestions into the IDP Plus YouTube this show, so we can see those and we'll get to them. Give us a follow on X, as we've talked about. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Shawn, anything to wrap up the show?
Now, feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. You can hit us up on YouTube, Twitter, Discord, whatever you need. Just holler at us if you need us.
All right, and with that, we'll be back to discuss week 2 next week. We'll be there for the Start Sit Show on Sunday. On behalf of Shawn Teague, this is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we are out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.